1581. Xi'an Husk Restoration Point. At this point in time, the cat treasure was clearly much weaker than what Li Fan had seen in his previous reincarnations. Even though the various artifacts displayed by the Shang Immortal ship's crew were quite extraordinary, with the power it had shown when it leapt up and suppressed the starving immortal, it shouldn't have been in such a sorry state. Being beaten down by the Shang Immortal ship's crew, the black and white cat's situation seemed to be getting worse. However, Li Fan noticed that although the black and white cat seemed to be suppressed miserably by the immortal ship's crew, it hadn't actually suffered any real damage. As for the youth known as the Holy Lord, apart from transforming into an orange cat at the very beginning, he hadn't made any other moves. He was just silently watching the changes in the field. Although the Shang Immortal ship's crew's offensive is fierce, it's actually irrelevant to capturing the cat treasure. The key, I'm afraid, still lies with this person, Li Fan thought, thinking of the blue chains that suppressed the orange cat. Li Fan's intuition has always been very accurate. After being beaten for a while, the black and white cat, hurt but not injured, actually became somewhat adapted to the Shang Immortal ship's crew's artifact attacks. The low roar slowly became comparable to the Suona's drumbeat. The black and white fur gradually stood up. Its eyes, fixed on the immortal ship's crew who were beating it, flashed with fierce light. Seeing that the situation was about to turn around, the Holy Merchant Lord finally made his move. And his method of attack can be said to be quite peculiar. He transformed into a cat again, but not the orange cat used to lure the enemy, but a pure illusory cat composed of blue light and shadow. The blue light rippled and swayed, dreamlike and hazy. Its size was also hundreds of times that of a normal cat treasure. Meow. In a low cry, the blue phantom exploded into billions of fine threads, all rushing towards the black and white cat. Unlike facing the previous attacks, the black and white cat clearly felt fear at this moment. The cat's fur all over its body stood on end, its back arched high. It let out a sharp explosion, repelling all the attacks around it. Its claws suddenly grabbed towards a nearby tree condensed from death energy, where it had previously hidden, shattering it with a single blow. As if it had been absorbed by it. The black on the black and white cat's body became much richer because of it. At the same time, the black and white cat's tail swept lightly towards the distance. Li Fan vaguely saw that at least tens of thousands of the Holy Merchant's people instantly lost all vitality, being absorbed by the black and white cat. In an instant, after absorbing a large amount of vitality and death energy, the black and white cat's pupils also turned one black and one white. The black and white cat fluttered, like a kasaya. The black and white cat then sat cross-legged in the void of the battlefield, like a human, pointing in the air towards the front. In the next moment, it seemed that endless vitality and death energy yang xian from the black and white cat's body. Or rather, it was this finger that completely disrupted the great Tao of life and death that already existed in the world. The great Tao of life and death is the cornerstone of the survival and development of all things. At this moment, being stirred up by the black and white cat, it was as if a storm appeared out of thin air, twisting the life and death of all things. Various artifacts were shattered by the storm. Billions of blue threads were forced to reveal their original forms. And the black and white cat sat motionless in the center of the storm, watching in the storm as the living fell and the dead were annihilated. The Shang Immortal ship's group of blue figures, although their life forms were special, still hadn't escaped the category of living beings. Caught off guard, they were swept away by the storm. They died. Only the Holy Merchant Lord, transformed into a blue light cat, survived in the field. The situation suddenly reversed dramatically, but no panic could be seen on the blue light cat's face. Even the storm of life and death continued to spread around, threatening to swallow the entire starry sky. Looking indifferently at the black and white cat in the center of the storm, the blue light and shadow transformed by the Holy Merchant Lord instantly expanded 100-fold again, covering the entire scope of the storm of life and death. In the storm, blue threads, like lightning, flickered non-stop. They didn't annihilate in the storm of life and death, but became stronger with the passage of time, slowly dyeing this chaotic area blue. The storm of life and death continued to spread outward, and Li Fan, hiding his will, had to retreat again and again. This divine power has some cat treasure style. An attack on the level of the great Tao, shaking the cornerstone of order. If it is allowed to spread, no one will come forward to suppress it. It can even swallow a possibility. The black and white storm of life and death almost swept across the entire starry sky. In the end, the originally vibrant Shang Immortal ship had already turned into a dead land. Only 100 or so breaths of life survived this calamity. However, the countless dense, net-like blue threads in the storm, and the black and white cat in the very center of the threads, heavily locked and bound, and falling into a deep sleep, indicated the identity of the final victor in this battle. The storm stopped, and the blue threads slowly tightened. The black and white cat fell into the same fate as the orange cat, being suppressed and imprisoned. The Shang merchant young lord changed back to human form, looking at the starry sky in front of him that was already dead and silent. He didn't have any emotional fluctuations. In the next moment, a sudden change occurred. An inexplicable wave suddenly descended and swept across the entire space. Afterwards, all those existences that had disappeared and passed away were restored to their original appearances. However, within a few breaths, vitality reappeared in this starry sky. At this time, a faint smile appeared on the holy merchant lord's face. This is Li Fan, who saw the sudden change, was secretly shocked in his heart. Because this scene was really somewhat familiar. It's very similar to Wanjun. But there is no aura of change between true and false. The wave just now came from. Li Fan raised his head and looked at the top of this space. The holy merchant lord, and the resurrected immortal ship's people, went to study the harvest this time. However, Li Fan didn't follow them back, but quietly flew towards the location he had just sensed. Although it wasn't simply located directly above the spatial structure, Li Fan still relied on his extremely keen insight to successfully find the source of the wave all the way. A jade-white skeleton was lying with its head tilted. The position gazed at by the hollow eyes of its skull was the Shang immortal ship below. Li Fan felt a faint danger from this skeleton. He didn't get close, just observed from a distance. With his knowledge, he couldn't even distinguish the details of the great Tao contained in this skeleton for a while. But there was no doubt that it was this skeleton that, restored, the immortal ship that had been destroyed in an instant. The change between true and false is to create something from nothing. This Tao is to change things back to their original state. Even under the change between true and false, the position of this Tao is extremely high. More importantly, I can sense that it is not an external object, but the original Tao. It's actually controlled by the Shang immortal ship. Judging from its aura, it seems to have stayed here for a long time. Li Fan couldn't help but recall Jian Daosheng's description of the Zan merchant immortal ship. The Zan merchant immortal ship escaped from the experimental field guarded by observers from the immortal realm. As an NPC, being able to escape from the control of the immortal realm can already explain their extraordinary nature to some extent. It seems that the Zan immortal ship, as the losing side in the split struggle, has far less foundation than the Shang immortal ship. It's just that they don't know it. I've been running to the hospital these past 2 days, and my condition is really not good, please forgive me. 1582. The Immortal. Li Fan possessed the open black lens bracket Supreme Audiobook close black lens bracket. Theoretically, he should have access to all existing Great Tao information from the origin. However, the Tao principles condensed within the skeleton before him were like open black lens bracket inscribed Tao close black lens bracket, indistinct and hidden. Comprehending this Tao could elevate my understanding of the transformation between truth and falsehood to a higher level. Li Fan felt a sudden premonition. However, he did not rashly attempt to plunder it. This immortal skeleton was undoubtedly extremely important to the merchant immortal ship. Yet, there were no defenses around it. Not even the blue light energy of the holy merchant lord had appeared. This only means that the power of this skeleton itself has already surpassed the sum of all defensive capabilities that the merchant immortal ship can mobilize. There is simply no need for defenses. The faint sense of crisis lingering in his heart never dissipated. Li Fan stared intently for a long time, unable to determine whether the skeleton before him was alive or dead. After pondering for a moment, Li Fan finally made up his mind. In the current situation, even the great heavenly venerate immortal puppet would be insufficient. His true self had to take action. For safety's sake, I will not easily step outside the high wall. But sending out the myriad manifestations down net is still possible. With a slight thought, the Xuanwang immortal realm quietly trembled. The invisible net covering it then began to permeate and spread outwards. He was not unfamiliar with the Shuo Star Sea outside the high wall. In his previous life, Li Fan had even co-founded the Shuo Star Sea, high wall system with Cheng Dao. Especially at this current point in time, the Shuo Star Sea Dao net had not yet been established. Therefore, the secret erosion of the myriad manifestations Dao net proceeded exceptionally smoothly. However, after all, this starry sky was still in a chaotic era where true immortals and cultivators coexisted. The further away from the high wall, the more the support from the Xuanwang immortal realm would be reduced, and the easier it would be to be detected. Li Fan did not expand blindly, but focused on the location of the merchant immortal ship. Based on the information gathered during this period of lurking, the entrance channel of the merchant immortal ship in the Shuo Star Sea would change periodically. However, perhaps the recent capture and research of the black and white cat had consumed most of the merchant immortal ship's energy. The entrance that Li Fan discovered showed no signs of changing recently. The tentacles of the myriad manifestations Downet were thus able to infiltrate smoothly. It is worth mentioning that the old man sitting at the entrance of the channel, responsible for guarding it, seemed to have noticed the arrival of the myriad manifestations Downet. His expression changed ever so slightly, but he still chose to act as if nothing had happened, just like before. This person is quite interesting. Li Fan did not entangle with him. The myriad manifestations Downet extended all the way, merging with the separated will. Within the tentacles of the myriad manifestations Downet, a phantom of Li Fan slowly formed amidst the wriggling. No matter how high the great Tao's status, it cannot escape the fate of the merging of mountains and seas. Li Fan stared at the immortal skeleton ahead. As far as his eyes could see, the newborn inked kill was at the forefront. Like fierce wolves and tigers, it rapidly approached. After being nurtured in the Xuanwang immortal realm for 100 years, and incorporating the rhythm of the longevity Tao, the newborn inked kill made its first appearance in the world. Even Li Fan himself did not fully know the power of this newborn inked kill. The inked kill black spots, like surging waves, heavily enveloped the immortal skeleton ahead. Li Fan then manipulated the myriad manifestations Downet to heavily seal off the surrounding space, ensuring that even if there were violent fluctuations here, the merchant immortal ship would not be able to detect it immediately. The myriad manifestations Downet was like a mirror, reflecting everything around it. Li Fan keenly noticed the connection between this skeleton and the outside world. But it was only this one connection. It seems that the merchant immortal ship's utilization of this skeleton is not very high. Perhaps it is only mechanically triggering its Tao principles. As Li Fan pondered, the inked kill tide had already completely swallowed the reclining skeleton. Li Fan was stunned. In his expectation, no matter how strong the newborn inked kill was, this skeleton should not be so defenseless. With its ability to constantly rewind and restore, it should at least be able to hold on for a while. Why is this so? Li Fan frowned and recalled the newborn inked kill. Where the reclining immortal skeleton had been, it was indeed empty. The inked kill should have devoured the skeleton. However, strangely, even though it had swallowed it, the inked kill seemed to have swallowed only air. Itself did not change in any way. The newborn inked kill can not only devour and annihilate all great Taos. It can also restore the devoured Taos, turning them into materials for weaving the myriad manifestations Downet. Li Fan gently stroked the ever-changing ink color at his hand, confirming that the inked kill's ability had not disappeared. So, realizing something, Li Fan refocused his gaze on the location where the reclining skeleton had disappeared. He silently counted the time in his heart. 99 breaths later, without any warning, the skeleton that had been swallowed by the inked kill reappeared abruptly in the field. Still quietly reclining, only this time, the empty eye sockets of the skull were not looking at the merchant immortal ship below, but at Li Fan. Sensing the faint chill that suddenly arose in Li Fan's heart, the inked kill beside him spontaneously surged up, guarding Li Fan. Extremely vigilant, but after a long time, Li Fan did not wait for the expected head-on attack. After observing for a while, and confirming that this strange skeleton would not pose any threat, Li Fan released the inked kill again, rushing towards the other party. The result was still the same. The skeleton was swallowed again without any resistance. Only 99 breaths later, it reappeared out of thin air. Its eyes still locked on Li Fan. Li Fan snorted coldly and tried again. This time, the inked kill cloud simply covered the location of the skeleton at all times. It did not retreat because of the skeleton's disappearance. As the 99 breaths approached, Li Fan held his breath and carefully observed the changes in the inked kill cloud. The skeleton did not appear where the inked kill was. But Li Fan instead had a bad feeling in his heart. Suddenly turning his head, he found that the skeleton had appeared beside him at some point. The posture had changed, no longer reclining, but rising and sitting cross-legged. The right bone palm was supporting the head, as if observing Li Fan with interest. Li Fan instinctively retreated violently. He only stopped when he reached a safe distance in his heart. The skeleton did not stop him, its empty eyes calmly observing Li Fan. Li Fan could finally confirm that the skeleton before him was still alive. Or rather, in a rather wonderful and incomprehensible state. It cannot be simply measured by life and death. Greetings, Senior. Li Fan shamelessly cupped his hands slightly and saluted, completely ignoring his previous brazen attack. The skeleton naturally had no reaction, as if it were just a pure skeleton. The scene suddenly fell into a static stalemate. Li Fan believed that if he retreated now, the skeleton should not stop him. But to withdraw just like that was truly like entering a treasure mountain and returning empty-handed. Since there is no threat for the time being, then let's probe again. He simply ignored the changes in the skeleton, and only drove the newborn ink-kill cloud, swallowing it again and again. And then again and again, watching the skeleton be reborn from the void. The ink-kill is a simulation of the tribulation of the merging of mountains and seas. Yet this skeleton can ignore the power of the ink-kill and recover repeatedly. How is this done? Even after repeatedly observing the process of the skeleton's reappearance hundreds of times, Li Fan still could not understand it. Completely illogical. Li Fan even thought at one point that the newborn ink-kill had become weaker. But the facts were before him. No matter how incredible it was, there must be a principle behind its existence. Theoretically, the ink-kill can devour all Daos in the mortal world. However, there is one Dao that can ignore the ink-kill. 1583. Eternal and Eternal Dao. Li Fan felt even more puzzled. After all, ink-kill was the answer that the people in the immortal realm had high hopes for in order to fight against the great calamity of the merging of mountains and seas. Since Li Fan fortuitously reproduced the power of the ink-kill immortal soul, it has been almost universally effective and invincible. However, now, this skeleton hidden in the merchant immortal ship can actually ignore the invasion of ink-kill. If it was resisting ink-kill in a stalemate, Li Fan could barely accept it. But the current situation is almost a one-sided suppression, which Li Fan can't understand no matter what. Either this Dao is not within the mortal world and is above the mountains and seas. Or, the ink-kill dark clouds surged, like an angry hound, vowing to devour the immortal remains. However, the actions of ink-kill were destined to be futile. Submerged by dark clouds, it disappeared. It reappeared quietly after a while. Such a cycle repeated. Li Fan temporarily suppressed the doubts in his heart and patiently continued to observe. The Dao contained in this skeleton has a high level, but it is impossible to be above the mountains and seas. Having cultivated in reincarnation until now, Li Fan is sure that he still has this much discernment. So why is it able to avoid the erosion of ink-kill? Watching the scenes of reincarnation in the field, Li Fan was immersed in it and didn't know how long had passed. Suddenly, his heart stirred. He stared at the tumbling ink sea in front of him and said thoughtfully, ink-kill cannot devour things beyond its own capabilities. The rest is itself. Could it be? Li Fan's thoughts returned to when he first saw Archmage Tiandu. With the help of the countless phantoms in the Archmage's body, Li Fan understood the two cornerstones of ink-kill, Tai and eternity. It is the intertwining of these two great divine powers of change and immutability that created the power that can contend with the merging of mountains and seas. At that time, I tried to use ink-kill to suppress and kill the Archmage. However, he resolved it with two simple sentences. Please disperse, Master. Please disperse, Uncle Master. Tai is the teacher of Wuji, and eternity is the Uncle Master of Wuji. Although, Uncle, means elder. Although eternity is not one of the three saints, being called Uncle Master by Wuji, its strength and status are not low. The great Dao contained in the skeleton in front of me is not Tai. In an instant, Li Fan recalled the scene where the merchant immortal ship, which had just been completely destroyed, was restored in an instant under the gaze of the hollow skull. He finally had an answer in his heart. The great Dao of eternity. Before identifying it, no matter how carefully you observe, it is difficult to see its clues. But after recognizing its origin, it seems to have brushed away the layers of disguise on the skeleton. What appears in front of you is no longer the appearance of a skeleton. But it shows its original form, a middle-aged man with a smile, a round face, kind eyes, and a benevolent appearance. However, he seems to be sleeping, with his eyes closed. He doesn't seem to care about everything outside. The great Dao of eternity is definitely one of the most supreme great Daos of the origin. Just by looking at it, countless insights seem to flood into Li Fan's mind in an instant. Li Fan's comprehension is not weak, and now with the blessing of the myriad manifestations Dao network in the Supreme Dao book, it can be said that he has a natural advantage in understanding all the great Daos in the origin. But now, in the process of observing eternity, even if countless insights can be generated at all times, these insights are like fragile bubbles, which quietly burst after only a moment, disappearing. No matter how hard Li Fan tries, the result will not change. The faint smile on the round-faced middle-aged man's face seems to be silently reminding Li Fan. The Tao of eternity belongs to, and will always belong to, him alone. Finally realizing this, Li Fan is not one to be ignorant of the times, and decisively stopped the act of enlightenment for the time being. Waving his hand to put away ink kill, he did not retreat from this space. After some observation, he was even more certain of his previous judgment. Although eternity is still alive, its state is a bit strange. Li Fan squinted his eyes and continued to observe for half a day before he understood the strangeness. The Tao of eternity still exists. But this true immortal who has attained eternity, its consciousness seems to have dissipated. What maintains its actions just now is just instinct. What is in front of me is not so much true immortal eternity as it is great Tao of eternity itself. However, it is still different from the original great Tao of eternity. It is now a version that has been transformed or fused by the true immortal who attained the Tao. Although the reason for this strange scene cannot be fully understood yet, Li Fan also has some guesses. I'm afraid it still has something to do with eternity itself. If there are fluctuations in one's own consciousness, it may be difficult to maintain a true state of eternity. Only by completely integrating one's own will into the pure great Tao can the premise of eternity's existence be established. In some worlds of cultivation, the highest realm of cultivators is not ascension. But it is in harmony with the heavenly Tao of the world. In a 16191 Book 1 bar, read a flawless version. This alternative, harmony of the Tao, can enable cultivators to complete self-transcendence and become as powerful as the world. But it will obliterate their own will and become a machine to maintain the operation of the heavenly Tao. Eternity's current situation is somewhat similar to this harmony of the Tao. After observing carefully for a long time, after several experiments, Li Fan barely verified his judgment. There is no autonomous aggressiveness, but it always maintains its own Tao characteristics. There will also be corresponding reactions to external stimulation methods. There is no mistake. So Li Fan, who had been shocked by the sudden manifestation of the great Tao of eternity, began to stir in his heart again. In a sense, the eternity in front of him is a concrete Tao rule. Moreover, this Tao rule is highly independent and powerful. It cannot be understood by others. But it can be stimulated and used. Recalling the scene where eternity restored the destroyed merchant immortal ship, Li Fan's eyes lit up. With this thing, it is equivalent to a lesser rejuvenation pill protecting me. No wonder the merchant immortal ship has survived the destruction of the immortal realm to this day, and can always be ahead of everyone else. Escaping the high wall, escaping the origin. It is precisely because eternity is backing it up that it has the confidence to carry out various seemingly extremely dangerous and irrational attempts. Although Li Fan had evil intentions towards the eternity great Tao, it was not easy to successfully stimulate the power of eternity like the merchant immortal ship. The merchant immortal ship has held eternity for who knows how many years, and what it is doing now is only able to make it open its eyes and restore the merchant immortal ship. Li Fan has just arrived, and because of the characteristics of eternity, he cannot understand it. It seems a bit of a fool's dream to reach the level of application of the merchant immortal ship in a short time. After trying many methods, none of them had any practical effect. So Li Fan changed his thinking. The eternal immortal remains are independent, self-contained, indestructible. However, since the merchant immortal ship can use the power of eternity to reproduce the destroyed immortal ship, it shows that the merchant immortal ship space below has a certain connection with the eternal immortal remains in front of you. Since self-research is not possible, then steal and learn from it. Unable to understand the great Tao of eternity, Li Fan is still confident that he can break through this inexplicable connection created by the merchant immortal ship. With a slight movement of his mind, the myriad manifestations Tao network, led by Ink Kill, reappeared. But this time the target was not the eternal immortal remains, but everything in this space except the eternal immortal remains. The ink tide surged, sweeping inch by inch, making sure nothing is missed. Like a great wave scouring sand, in the surge of dark clouds, everything hidden in this space is revealed. Li Fan also saw clearly the means of the merchant immortal ship. What is used to forcibly connect with the already Taoified eternity, so that the merchant immortal ship space can attract the attention of the eternal immortal remains. It is actually a futon. The futon looks ordinary, as if it is woven from purple bamboo. This futon seems a bit familiar. After a slight daze, Li Fan quickly found its origin from his memory. It is the futon that Master Saint Lord Tai sat on in the image of Archmage Tiandu. Compared to the memory of the Archmage, this futon seems to have suffered a lot of calamities and has become much older. However, that unique rhythm has not changed after all. After Li Fan stared at it for a long time, he actually seemed to see the vague figure of Tai from this futon. 1584. The Tao refines the mountains and seas. The prayer mat floated silently, as if the grand saint of Tai were present. Even Li Fan felt an uncontrollable tremor in his heart the moment he saw this phantom. No wonder the merchant Immortal ship can use this to attract the attention of open black lens bracket eternity close black lens bracket. Suppressing the instinctive feeling of trembling, Li Fan carefully examined the purple prayer mat. How could the grand saint of Tai's belongings appear in the lower realm? According to the heavenly capital Grand Master's memory, the Grand Saint of Tai might have foreseen the inevitable end of the primordial era being swallowed by Tao annihilation. Like the other two saints, he chose to retreat from the world, no longer interfering with the affairs of the primordial era. However, when Tai departed, all the items within the Tai palace remained untouched, as they were before. Only a phantom image was left behind to provide guidance. The heavenly capital Grand Master, as his disciple, continued to treat the phantom as his teacher, just as he had in the past. That was until the tide of Tao annihilation swept in, completely engulfing the primordial immortal realm. The heavenly capital Grand Master fled in panic, and under the guidance of the phantom, he discovered the origin of Mo Sha hidden beneath the origin Tao continent of the Xuanwang realm. At that time, the Grand Master was only concerned with escaping, and he didn't have time to take away many items from the Tai palace. After all, to him, everything was ordinary except for the Tai phantom. But for others, it's not the same. Tai, as one of the three saints of the immortal realm, holds an incredibly high position. Any item in the Tai palace could be a priceless treasure, especially those that were close to the Grand Saint of Tai. It seems that someone, at the critical moment when the calamity of Tao annihilation was approaching, not only didn't flee but also sneaked into the deserted Tai palace to plunder it. Li Fan couldn't help but feel curious about this audacious individual. The prayer mat obtained at such great risk is here, but the person has disappeared without a trace. Could it be that they have already met with misfortune? Li Fan was certain that there were no unexplored areas left on the entire merchant immortal ship. The two cat treasures and the eternal immortal corpse were the biggest hidden secrets of the merchant immortal ship. Perhaps the eternal immortal corpse being here is also inseparable from this person. Only the Holy Merchant Lord knows the answer. Li Fan temporarily refrained from targeting the Holy Lord and instead kept his focus on the eternal immortal corpse. The eternal Tao might play a crucial role in Li Fan's upcoming plans. If there is the blessing of the eternal force, when the Xuanwang immortal realm collides with the mountains and seas, we can gain more buffer time. Li Fan thought to himself, his figure and appearance changing simultaneously. In a moment, he had transformed from his original form into the appearance of the heavenly capital Grand Master's Taoist attendant. Not only his body shape and appearance but even the open black lens bracket limitless close black lens bracket power innate to the Grand Master was surging and revealed within him. First there was Tai, then there were immortals, limitless was even before Tai. Li Fan softly chanted, smiling as he bowed towards the eternal immortal corpse in front of him. Greetings, martial uncle. The smiling round-faced man suddenly opened his eyes. His gaze shifted from the Tai prayer mat below, focusing on Li Fan. Being stared at by the eternal Tao, Li Fan wasn't flustered at all. After all, his current state couldn't even be considered a disguise. After the real heavenly capital Grand Master was suppressed by him and transformed into a heavenly pillar, what was manifested within the myriad manifestations down at this moment was the true open black lens bracket limitless close black lens bracket. It was just a different core. But it was clear that the Tao transformed open black lens bracket eternity close black lens bracket couldn't distinguish the difference between the former and the latter limitless. In his eyes, the person in front of him was his long unseen martial nephew. Although there were no actions such as nodding in acknowledgement, Li Fan had already sensed the other party's preferential treatment. A warm force enveloped Li Fan. Like a raincoat draped over him in a storm, Li Fan felt an unprecedented sense of peace the moment he was protected by the eternal force. It seemed that even if Tao annihilation descended, he wouldn't need to worry. It's not just an illusion. The eternal Tao can indeed resist Tao annihilation to some extent. Li Fan reached out and gently stroked the invisible coat outside his body. However, his gaze drifted into the distance, beyond the possibilities of the primordial era. Being able to be on par with the three saints must mean that he is not weak. He is another existence that spans many possibilities. Even if he hasn't reached the realm of the three saints, who exist in all realms, he is not far from it. However, this open black lens bracket unity of all selves close black lens bracket of the eternal Tao is somewhat different from the Black Heaven Doctor, Evil Subai, and others I've encountered before. Through the eternal coat he was wearing at the moment, Li Fan could vaguely sense the eternal Tao's shining in other possibilities. Like a thread, it stretched across the mountains and seas, connecting many possibilities. After gazing for a long time, he finally withdrew his gaze and looked again at the round-faced man in front of him who had already merged with the Tao. The Tao merged eternity on other possibilities is not him. But they are strange and different. Some are stubborn stones, some are the strongest in a realm, and some are evergreen trees. In 16191 Book 1 Bar, there is no mistake in reading the version. But their final ending is the same. They merge with the eternal Tao and are completely integrated. When all possible existences have given birth to eternity, that is the moment when the open black lens bracket eternal Tao close black lens bracket is truly refined. Thinking of this, Li Fan faintly felt a sense in his heart. It seemed that it was not the cultivators on countless possibilities who were cultivating the eternal Tao but the open black lens bracket eternity close black lens bracket Tao itself. A faint chill rose from the bottom of Li Fan's heart. Perhaps at that time, the refined eternal Tao could be comparable to the mountains and seas to a certain extent. After understanding the power of the eternal Tao, Li Fan's decision became even firmer. In the guise of the Grand Master, he bowed again and slightly bowed. This place is simple and crude, I hope Martial Uncle will move. So that this Martial Nephew can serve you. Limitless being before Tai is not just the Grand Master's boast. Compared to the prayer mat left by Tai, it was clear that the limitless Martial Nephew had more weight in eternity's heart. At this moment, as Li Fan spoke, the round-faced man did not hesitate at all, turning into a ball of light and attaching himself to Li Fan. As long as Li Fan returned to the Xuanwang Immortal realm, he would be able to bring back the eternal Tao, the greatest foundation of the merchant immortal ship. It seemed incredibly easy, almost like a joke. But it must be known that if Li Fan did not possess the power of Limitless, he would not have been able to complete this task at all. Even if he used the transformation of truth and falsehood, the result would be the same. This is what it means to specialize in a subject, prescribing the right medicine. In order to avoid any complications, Li Fan did not stop for a moment. He quickly retracted the tentacles of the myriad manifestations Tao net, wrapped the eternal Tao, and quickly returned. Before leaving, Li Fan also deliberately left behind the coat that eternity had given him earlier. Used as an empty shell of eternity to confuse the people of the merchant immortal ship. Just as Li Fan thought that his theft was undetectable and he was about to leave the merchant immortal ship. "Senior, please take me with you," the old man guarding the door suddenly shouted. Recommend this book. The correct way to raise a female lead, a warm and healing daily life, feeling that the corpse is warm. 1585. Originated from the world of gods and witches. At the entrance of the merchant immortal ship, the old man with no hair, sitting on the earthy yellow wooden chair, actually stood up. His figure was no longer hunched, and without waiting for Li Fan's agreement, he quickly approached as the myriad manifestations Tao net retracted. Although he said, "Senior, please take me with you," to Li Fan. The old man's gaze, however, was fixed on the eternal great Tao within the myriad manifestations Tao net. In his dim eyes, which were so dark that no light could be seen, a very complex expression was revealed. There was both an uncontrollable desire and some restraint. The round-faced man representing the primordial eternal great Tao seemed to completely ignore him. He didn't change in the slightest from beginning to end. However, Li Fan did not turn a blind eye. Stopping slightly, Li Fan looked at him and asked, "Are you not a citizen of the Holy Merchant?" The old man's gaze then left the eternal and he bowed slightly to Li Fan, solemnly answering, "No, no. I hope Senior will understand that I came to the merchant immortal ship many years ago to follow the path of eternity. Now that eternity has shifted, I will naturally follow." Li Fan became interested upon hearing this. The myriad manifestations Tao net wrapped him up and retreated towards the Xuanwang immortal realm within the high wall. Faced with the wrapping of the myriad manifestations Tao net, the old man did not resist, but allowed Li Fan to do as he pleased. On the way back, he answered all of Li Fan's questions without reservation. When did you come to the merchant Immortal ship? It's been too long, and I can't quite remember. But at that time, the Immortal ship was not yet an immortal ship, but a blessed land in the world of cultivation. Later, the blessed land broke away from the world and abandoned it, transforming into the mysterious merchant Immortal ship. Later, the Immortal ship floated in the sea of stars, drifting uncertainly. Eventually, due to differences, it split into two in a civil war. The victor was the merchant, and the defeated was the mysterious. I then followed the split merchant Immortal ship, passed through the high wall, and came to the new starry sky. The old man spoke slowly and unhurriedly. You are not a true immortal, but immortal. How can you see the eternal great Tao? Li Fan could see clearly that although the old man in front of him was quite mysterious, he did not have the aura of connecting to the mountains and seas. He was a pure mortal cultivator. This was also the main reason why Li Fan felt safe letting him approach. Senior, to tell you the truth, I come from the world of divine shamans. I have a natural keen insight into all kinds of great Taos. Therefore, I was able to see the eternal Tao, which is hidden in the world, at a glance, the old man replied very humbly. The world of divine shamans. Li Fan was slightly startled upon hearing this. A picture immediately appeared in his mind. 12 solemn palaces standing above the clouds, distributed in a ring, occupying the sky of the world. In each palace, a statue was enshrined. Countless cultivators like ants on the earth knelt and prayed. Flipping his hand, he took out the azure underworld pearl and asked, "Do you recognize this thing?" Only a moment later, the old man recognized this object from his hometown. His emotional fluctuations were even greater than when he saw the eternal great Tao being plundered. Is this the azure underworld sacred pearl? The old man wanted to take a closer look, but Li Fan had already put away the azure underworld pearl. Please forgive me, senior, I was just missing my home, the old man said with a lost expression. Tell me about it. The azure underworld sacred pearl is one of the 12 sacred artifacts of my divine shaman world. The 12 sacred artifacts were refined by the 12 shaman gods, who searched for the great Taos of the various worlds and integrated them into their own essence and blood. The 12 shaman gods existed before the immortal realm was opened up. Each one possessed unimaginable supreme power. They are not weaker than true immortals. According to legend, after the immortal realm was born, in order to get a glimpse of the secrets of the immortal realm, the shaman gods used the sacred artifacts as substitutes to enter the immortal realm. From then on, they opened the path to immortality for countless sentient beings in the divine shaman world. Later, the Great Tribulation descended, and the immortal realm collapsed. The divine shaman world could not avoid such a disaster. The 12 shaman gods joined forces to save the world, buying the last time for the sentient beings to escape. I followed the teleportation channel opened by the shaman gods, and that's how I was lucky enough to escape with my life. The channels opened by the shaman gods can actually lead to this enclosed high wall. Li Fan smiled lightly, interrupting him. At this moment, the myriad manifestations Tao Net happened to bring the two of them and the eternal great Tao back to the Xuanwang immortal realm. However, the old man was no longer able to answer Li Fan's question. The moment he saw the Xuanwang immortal realm, the divine shaman world's old man was petrified, standing there dumbfounded. Divine shaman world cultivators resonate with the great Tao with their divine souls, manipulate the great Tao, and replace the great Tao. They have a natural keen understanding of the great Tao of heaven and earth. Therefore, the moment he entered the Xuanwang immortal realm, the old man saw that the sky was high and the earth was far away, and the great Tao was newly prosperous, a scene of vigorous vitality. It was far from comparable to the desolate starry sky outside. The old man had never been to the immortal realm, but looking at this realm, it might not be inferior to the former immortal realm. He greedily looked around. He was as hungry as if every corner of the Xuanwang heaven and earth was filled with rare treasures. And his extremely old appearance, along with his observation, actually slowly became younger again. The old man was observing the Xuanwang immortal realm, while Li Fan was also observing the old man. He had already received the eternal great Tao and placed it at the highest point of the Xuanwang immortal realm's sky, properly settled. At this moment, Li Fan was carefully examining this divine shaman world cultivator with great interest. Obviously, he was comprehending the Tao. But it was different from the process of ordinary cultivators comprehending the Tao. Li Fan could see that within this short period of time entering the Xuanwang immortal realm, this person's understanding of the various great Taos between heaven and earth had not deepened. The reason why he was able to rejuvenate was because he simply drew power directly from the countless Tao principles of heaven and earth. As the parents of Xuanwang, Li Fan could keenly perceive that the Xuanwang heaven and earth great Tao was weakened by a trace because of the extraction of this divine shaman world cultivator. Even if the amount extracted was minimal, it did indeed happen. It's actually somewhat similar to the abilities of the newborn Mo Sha. The ability to steal is much weaker, but in an instant, it can almost simultaneously lock onto all the intertwined Tao principles between heaven and earth. He really has some tricks. Li Fan snorted coldly and directly cut off his connection with the Xuanwang Great Tao. As if his eyes had been instantly poked blind and his throat had been strangled, the divine shaman world cultivator let out a scream. He quickly realized that his impolite behavior had angered Li Fan, and he quickly knelt on the ground, repeatedly kowtowing and begging for forgiveness. It's not that this junior did it intentionally, but that my instincts were uncontrollable. Senior, please don't blame me, please don't blame me. Li Fan could see that the other party was not lying. However, the peculiar physique of this divine shaman world cultivator made him really curious. Ignoring the other party's wailing and begging for mercy, he suppressed and sealed him. Then, he sent a wisp of divine thought into the other party's body and carefully observed it. As if he had entered the azure underworld pearl, 12 halls standing in the sky reappeared before Li Fan. 1586. Zhan Huang engraved eternity. The hall was dedicated to 12 witch gods. 11 of them were hidden in a gray mist, making it impossible to see their true faces. The remaining one had 3 eyes and 4 arms, with a serene expression. The eyes on either side resembled deep, bottomless pools. The vertical eye in the center seemed to reflect countless creatures from the god-witch realm. The cultivator guarding the entrance to the merchant immortal boat passage was one of those countless beings reflected in his eyes. Li Fan remained fearless, meeting the gaze of this so-called witch god. Although named a god, when Li Fan stood before him, his figure could not be reflected in his eyes. Li Fan was able to observe carefully. After some study, he concluded, although the 12 witch gods have fallen, the witch god seats left within the beings of the god-witch realm have not dissipated. God-witch realm cultivators can activate them, and the witch god seats they worship and pay homage to vary, often only able to choose one. Once activated, they can borrow the power of the witch god to a certain extent. Gaining insight into and sensing the great Tao, and drawing power from it, is only the most basic ability. Li Fan attempted to enter the witch god seats above the azure sky with his divine sense. However, to him, those magnificent structures seemed like mere phantoms, non-existent. He passed right through them, unable to find the entrance. He could only glean the various abilities acquired after worshipping the witch god from the memories of god-witch realm cultivators. The 3-eyed witch god, Kang Ming Shu, governs the cycle of life and death in the god-witch realm. That's why this god-witch realm cultivator named Wu Xin can live so long without dying. Absorbing souls, seeing grievances, listening to disasters. All of this, though not particularly powerful, is easily obtained through worship. It becomes a unique skill, and can be integrated into one's cultivation techniques, complementing each other. The countless witch god seats projected by the witch gods within the beings of the god-witch realm may seem like a dispersal of their power. In reality, they are somewhat similar to anchor points. Even if a witch god falls temporarily, as long as any god-witch realm beings survive in the mortal world, with continuous reproduction and worship, these witch gods have a chance to be resurrected. The god-witch realm was created jointly by the 12 witch gods, and all the laws within the realm are governed by the gods. Li Fan vaguely felt that the god-witch realm he glimpsed in Wu Xin's memory, to some extent, bore many similarities to the Xuanwang immortal realm he had created. However, the level of the Xuanwang immortal realm was far above that of the god-witch realm, and Li Fan was the sole master of Xuanwang. But the god-witch realm was born extremely early, with hundreds of billions of years of inheritance, and there were many things worth Li Fan learning from it. For example, when living in the god-witch realm, the loyalty of living beings to the witch gods could be guaranteed. But when they leave the god-witch realm and go to other worlds, or even ascend to the immortal realm, how can their continued loyalty to the witch gods be ensured? The answer lies in the witch god seats within the beings. The witch god seat is actually a combination of the witch god's power projection and the life essence of the being. With each increase in strength of the god-witch realm cultivator, the witch god seat becomes more solid. At the same time, it becomes more deeply bound to the cultivator. If the cultivator betrays the witch god, it is equivalent to betraying the foundation that has been continuously solidified since cultivation began. At best, their cultivation will be destroyed. At worst, they will die and disappear. Even true immortals are no exception. For example, because of the witch god's favor, the lifespan of beings in the god-witch realm is extremely long. And the god-witch realm is not connected to the mountains and seas, lacking infinite attributes. In order to maintain the prosperity of the god-witch realm, every 10 million years, the god-witch realm will undergo a reboot. This is the world-destroying tribulation jointly brought down by the 12 witch gods. Below the witch gods, all beings are equal and must face the tribulation. Among billions of beings, only the 99 most fortunate and powerful can survive. And the next round of civilization begins with these 99 people. In this way, like sifting sand from the waves, in round after round of restarts, the aptitude of god-witch realm cultivators shows a steady upward trend. Of course, there were monks who attempted to break this cruel cycle of doom, but in the face of the will of the 12 witch gods, all resistance was futile. The Xuanwang immortal realm is the foundation for my crossing the mountains and seas. It really needs to be managed well. I was too lenient before. My methods were close to free range, and although there haven't been any problems yet due to my extremely strong control, it will be hard to say in the future. After all sorts of monsters and gods have wanted to get involved in the Xuanwang realm. Li Fan was a modest person. He did not hesitate to praise others' strengths over his own, and if there were advanced experiences, he would learn them in a timely manner. The beings of Xuanwang only know of the great changes in the world, but they do not know of the Xuanwang parents behind them. It is opportune to proclaim the name of the divine at the moment when eternity reflects Xuanwang. Li Fan's divine sense withdrew from Wu Xin's body. He looked at the eternal great Tao sitting cross-legged above the sky. After 7 days of active adjustment, he adjusted the overall state of the Xuanwang immortal realm to its best. Li Fan once again transformed into the Grand Archmage's avatar. This realm was created by my junior apprentice. If senior uncle is satisfied, he can reside here for a long time. After a moment, the round-faced man heard this and slowly opened his eyes. In that instant, the Xuanwang immortal realm seemed to be frozen, falling into a moment of stillness. The round-faced man closed his eyes, and the freeze was lifted. Then came a series of dense tremors. Heaven and earth rumbled, and strange phenomena appeared frequently in the air. But what was revealed was not the application of the Xuanwang immortal realm. It was clearly the various things seen by the eternal great Tao in other possibilities. When the round-faced man opened his eyes and eternity was engraved, Li Fan, as the master of Xuanwang, was also constantly on guard. Although eternity had almost no will of its own and acted entirely on instinct and mechanically, it was, after all, an existence that could traverse the mountains and seas, and Li Fan also needed to be somewhat wary. He had to prevent the other party's influence in the Xuanwang realm from exceeding his own and becoming the new master of Xuanwang. As eternity descended and influenced the Xuanwang immortal realm, a mysterious figure with an immortal aura also appeared in the hearts of all Xuanwang beings. Almost instantly, the beings of Xuanwang knew the identity of this figure. The source of the Xuanwang realm's changes, the Xuanwang heaven and earth parents. The primordial Xuanwang world governing spirit firmament Holy Venerable. Irresistibly, the beings felt the urge to kneel in their hearts. Their bodies were out of control, and they slowly bowed down as the Xuanwang heaven and earth trembled slightly. And with their kneeling, this figure in their hearts solidified from illusion to reality. It was like a statue of a god, standing between their spiritual platforms. With just a thought, it could be sensed again at any time. Worshipping and kneeling to the Holy Venerable was like directly facing countless great Taos. One bow was better than 3 years of enlightenment. It was a pity that after one bow, the Holy Venerable's statue became illusory again. It needed to rely on the sincere faith in their hearts to condense again. The descent of the primordial Xuanwang world governing spirit firmament Holy Venerable instantly changed the structure of the Xuanwang immortal realm. In less than half a day, more than 100 cave heaven stars emerged. And the first, transformation god, cultivator of the Xuanwang immortal realm was also produced. 1587. Wish all book friends a happy new year. It's a new year again, and first of all, I wish all my readers a happy new year. Due to health reasons, the updates for the last 2 months of last year were very poor. In the new year, everything is renewed and refreshed. I will return to a normal update schedule. The road to immortality is expected to be completed in the first half of the year, and then I will take a good rest to prepare for the next book. Coding continuously for several years has really taken a toll on my mind and spirit. The closer I get to the end, the more exhausted I become. However, I will definitely continue to write well and give the road to immortality a satisfying ending. In these last few months of serialization, in the new year, I'm still shamelessly asking for your monthly ticket support. Please. 1588. Eternal Name of Deification. This first transformation god cultivator was none other than Su-bai. Above the sky, the Tianren star burst forth with light 1,000 times brighter than usual, like a second sun, illuminating the sky of the Xuanwang immortal realm with a blazing white. All stars faded, only Tianren appeared. While attracting all living beings in the Xuanwang immortal realm to look up, a thin line also rose from this shining star, soaring into the sky. It shot straight towards the Xuanwang immortal realm, beyond the heavens. If the phenomena of Tianren's star could still be sensed by the beings of the Xuanwang immortal realm, then what happened beyond the heavens was already beyond their knowledge. They could only allow Tianren's star to shine, look up and gaze, and silently await the results. The dazzling light, comparable to the sun, lasted for a full hour. When the light began to converge, and the thin line that shot towards the outer heavens gradually returned, a majestic and enormous figure suddenly appeared above the sky. This figure was so grand that even the sky of the entire Xuanwang immortal realm could not contain its form. Only its seated upper body could be seen. Before all living beings realized the true identity of this magnificent figure, their bodies had already instinctively knelt down. Then the masses understood who he was. The primordial Xuanwang world-ruling spirit firmament Saint Sovereign. All beings trembled, their souls boiled. As if witnessing the Tao, their thoughts froze due to fear, while their bodies seemed to be gradually attracted and decomposed by the appearance of the Saint Sovereign's phantom. The masses knew that this was not their illusion. It was because the Xuanwang Saint Sovereign was too powerful, and they could not withstand the divine might of the deity. Just like snow and ice are destined to melt under the sun. In front of the great primordial Xuanwang world-ruling spirit firmament Saint Sovereign, the masses were not even ants. Even if the Saint Sovereign revealed only a slight fluctuation of aura, the masses would be unable to resist and would be annihilated. And the reason they were still alive now was because something was blocking between the Xuanwang Saint Sovereign and the masses. It was a boundless scroll floating and unfolding. Originally, this scroll was empty, but now, it had its first name. Su-bai. Originally, a name was just a code. You are called Su-bai, I can also be called Su-bai, and anyone else can be called Su-bai. But from the moment this name appeared on the deification roll, Su-bai became a specific designation from then on. It is, and can only be, the Tianren star that shines through the heavens and earth. Those in the world who shared the same name as Su-bai had already disappeared like dust, leaving no trace of their existence, and even the memories of their closest relatives contained no trace of them. And in the future, there would be no second Su-bai. This is the transformation god realm of the Xuanwang immortal realm, entering the Saint Sovereign's eyes and gaining eternal fame. Of course, gaining eternal fame is only the most direct improvement in perception for outsiders after transformation god. As for the earth-shattering changes that truly occur within oneself, only the person involved knows. The Saint Sovereign's magnificent giant statue finally slowly dissipated. And without the illumination of the Saint Sovereign's glory, although the deification roll always floated in the outer heavens, the masses could not see it. Only the nascent soul cultivators who transformed into stars could vaguely glimpse its traces. Therefore, the heart of striving became even stronger. Those who can cultivate to this realm have a sense of pride in their hearts. Since he, Su-bai, can advance to transformation god, then why can't I do it? After the birth of the first transformation god cultivator in the Xuanwang immortal realm, the appearance of the second and third transformation god cultivators will not be far away. Su-bai seemed to use himself as a bridge to shorten the huge gap between the nascent soul realm and the transformation god realm in the Xuanwang immortal realm. Other cultivators displayed their abilities, wanting to become the second person on the deification roll. But Su-bai himself did not have the joy of attaining transformation god. On the contrary, he looked painful and was in deep self-blame. After the changes in the world, I don't know how many times the number of living beings in the world has increased. How many of them originally had the same name as me? And now, they all died because of me. Su-bai's face was pale, and his body trembled uncontrollably. Saint Sovereign, can the strong ignore the lives of the weak? Can the strong do whatever they want? Is this really right? After a long time, Su Bai finally came out of regret and self-blame. Then, this question could not help but emerge in his heart. He raised his head and looked at the outer heavens, and asked the Xuanwang Saint Sovereign directly. However, he did not receive a response from the Saint Sovereign. Instead, he learned an unexpected piece of news, which made his face turn pale again and his heart cold. The Xuanwang tribulation, the heavens and earth reopen, and all living beings will fall. Only those who have a name on the deification roll can escape this tribulation. Su Bai was struck by lightning. Having already entered the deification roll, he should feel fortunate and have no worries about disasters. But when he thought that countless sentient beings below would be reduced to ashes in the upcoming catastrophe, Su Bai felt a burst of suffocation. Is there no way to stop this calamity? He asked instinctively. The Saint Sovereign did not respond. Only the cold deification roll hung high in the sky, reflecting the billions of living beings in Xuanwang. There must be a way. There must be a way. Su Bai murmured to himself, his eyes gradually changed from confusion to firmness, staring at the outer heavens. His idea was very simple: as long as he met the Xuanwang Saint Sovereign in person, he might be able to persuade him to withdraw the decree to destroy the world. Only by merging with the Tao can one cross this invisible boundary. Merging with the Tao, Su Bai narrowed his eyes and once again felt the countless great Taos between heaven and earth. This time, his desire to go further was 1,000 times stronger than before. As expected, Su Bai is still that Su Bai. Seeing all of Su Bai's changes from beginning to end, Li Fan couldn't help but sneer. Wanting to save the world, can you save it all? Without the Xuanwang tribulation, there is still the mountain and sea tribulation. Your own strength is not very good, and you still want to think about this and that. Li Fan naturally could not resonate with Su Bai. But if he could make Su Bai actively accelerate his cultivation and completely squeeze out his aptitude, Li Fan would not stop him from changing his mind. After incorporating the eternal Great Tao, the solidity of the Xuanwang Immortal realm has increased by at least 30%. Moreover, this effect will increase as the names on the deification roll increase. In fact, this was really an unexpected surprise. In version 1.6.191 of the book bar, there are no mistakes. When Li Fan, under the guise of Tai, attracted eternity to open its eyes and glance at the Xuanwang Immortal realm, engraving a trace of eternal attributes into the world, the eternal Great Tao subsequently closed its eyes. Li Fan was already quite satisfied with this result, and then he conveniently projected the image of himself transformed into a deity into the hearts of all Xuanwang beings. As for later, cultivators breaking through to Transformation God and leaving their names on the Xuanwang deification roll was originally within Li Fan's plan. However, what Li Fan did not expect was that after Su Bai ascended to the deification roll, eternity, which had clearly closed its eyes and no longer interfered with worldly affairs, actually opened its eyes again. Although the duration of gazing was much shorter than when Li Fan invited it before, it still added another point of eternal attributes to the Xuanwang Immortal realm. I just don't know if eternity reopened its eyes because of Su Bai or just because of the appearance of a pure genius in this world. However, as long as the next person on the deification roll appears, we can probably determine it. Li Fan's divine sense swept across the entire Xuanwang Immortal realm, locking onto potential candidates. Most of them were expected candidates. Only one was a little beyond Li Fan's expectations. Although this person was only at the Foundation Establishment realm now, in Li Fan's estimation, he might even be ranked in the top 3 on the deification roll. This speed of cultivation and enlightenment, it didn't exist before. Did it just appear? Because of the addition of eternity? Or, this person who was being watched by Li Fan was a thin man named Zhang Shangji. Although he looked upright, a strange gloom flashed between his eyebrows from time to time. After deeply observing his inner heart, Li Fan finally understood why this person's talent for enlightenment suddenly improved by leaps and bounds. The so-called talent for enlightenment is actually the compatibility with various great Taos. Before this, Zhang Zishang's talent for enlightenment was actually mediocre. Even now, it is still the same. And the reason why earth-shattering changes occurred in an instant was all because of the official manifestation of the primal Xuanwang world-ruling spirit firmament Saint Sovereign. The Xuanwang Saint Sovereign is Li Fan, is the Xuanwang parent. It is the greatest Tao in this world, the Tao above the Tao. And Zhang Zishang has an extremely good compatibility with Li Fan. Using any means to achieve his goals, not trusting anyone from the bottom of his heart, cold and ruthless like a cold machine. Many traits, Even thinking patterns and behavioral guidelines are almost exactly the same as Li Fan. If Li Fan didn't clearly know that there was no bloodline of his own in the Xuanwang Immortal realm, Li Fan would almost think that Zhang Zisheng was his own flesh and blood. After figuring out the ins and outs of the matter, Li Fan couldn't help but be speechless. The reason why Zhang Zisheng's cultivation can improve by leaps and bounds is simply good luck, like Li Fan. Once he leaves the Xuanwang Immortal realm, he will be useless. After all, he doesn't have Wanjun, nor does he have infinite spirituality. Li Fan shook his head slightly. He didn't intend to pay too much attention, nor did he intend to deliberately interfere. The way of heaven is impermanent, and everything is left to nature. After settling the eternal Great Tao in the Xuanwang Immortal realm, wanting to return to the Merchant Immortal boat to retrieve the two cat treasures, Li Fan suddenly thought of something else based on Zhang Zisheng's matter. Xuanwang and Mountain Sea share the same principles. The so-called talent may just be similar to certain existences. The Great Tao originates from the Mountain Sea, and the Mountain Sea comes from the so-called Creator God. 1589. The Holy Dynasty reflects the eternity. Perhaps, the so-called talent of cultivators in the mountains and seas is, to some extent, similar to that of the open black lens bracket God of creation close black lens bracket, Li Fan mused leisurely. As eternity took root, the Xuanwang Immortal realm became more stable and, in turn, nourished Li Fan. Within the myriad manifestations Tao network, it was as if refined gold had been implanted, forming a stable support. Even if it extended far beyond the high wall, there would not be a significant degree of attenuation. Therefore, when Li Fan re-entered the Merchant Immortal ship this time, the illusory shadow of himself, wrapped in the myriad manifestations Tao network, could exert almost half the strength of his true self. Although eternity forms its own Tao, others cannot comprehend it. But it can be borrowed. It's just like adding natural treasures during the process of refining artifacts or pills. Thinking this way, Li Fan had already infiltrated the Holy Merchant again. The people of the Merchant Immortal ship were still immersed in the research of the newly captured cat treasure. Moreover, with the eternal, outer garment, left by Li Fan before his departure as a cover, they had not even noticed the loss of the open black lens bracket eternal Great Tao close black lens bracket. However, the inexplicable disappearance of Wu Xin, who was responsible for guarding the entrance of the Merchant Immortal ship, caused quite a stir. After all, Wu Xin had been in the Merchant Immortal ship for who knows how many years and was definitely considered a veteran. The Holy Merchant Master personally investigated the scene, but failed to figure out the real reason for his disappearance. After much consideration, the Holy Merchant Master simply ordered the location of the entrance passage to be changed, rather than choosing to block all entrances. This gave Li Fan another chance to invade. Familiar with the route, he arrived at the space where the cat treasure was imprisoned. The current situation was very different from when Li Fan left. The orange cat was still tightly bound by countless blue chains. Beside him, the black and white cat that had been captured later was free to move around. It walked around the orange cat, sniffing and meowing softly from time to time. The orange cat seemed very indifferent to its companion. Its eyes were tightly closed, and it remained motionless. Occasionally, a burst of orange light would erupt from its body, forcibly resisting the restraint of the blue chains and pushing back the approaching black and white cat. Li Fan keenly sensed that this orange light contained unparalleled warmth and vitality. If the power of the black and white cat was the cold power of the great Tao of life and death, then the orange cat's body was just a pure condensation of vitality. Because the gathered vitality was too vast, even the external manifestation of power was far greater than that of the black and white cat. And when the orange cat was forced to erupt with orange light, countless shallow blue symbols synchronously flashed in the surrounding space of the Merchant Immortal ship, stealing the vitality within the orange light. After that, Li Fan saw that the black and white cat had a few strands of orange fur on its body. This black and white cat is probably not the main body of the cat treasure, but rather, a transformation of the Holy Merchant Master, Li Fan thought to himself. As Li Fan expected, orange and black and white, different colors appeared on the body. The black and white cat's body suddenly showed a strange flickering of light and shadow. It kept changing between a human body and a cat's body. Finally, with a muffled groan, the Holy Merchant Master revealed his true form. The originally lying orange cat suddenly opened its eyes. Its body was lowered, and it let out a low roar like a whale at the Holy Merchant Master. The countless blue chains around it seemed to be unable to restrain him for a moment, and they shook violently. Many chains even collapsed directly, turning into countless light spots and dissipating. It could be seen how much the orange cat hated the holy merchant master. The holy merchant master was quite indifferent, and with a gentle wave of his hand, layers of light-colored light shields sealed and enveloped the orange cat. Finally, a light sphere was formed, completely sealing the cat treasure inside. The commotion disappeared as a result. Immediately afterwards, figures appeared one after another, precisely those holy merchant people who participated in the cat treasure research. As expected of one of the 7 prototypes of seizing heaven, the strength of open black lens bracket loquat close black lens bracket is still much stronger than open black lens bracket by Qian close black lens bracket. We only used a few days to analyze by Qian. But for open black lens bracket loquat close black lens bracket, we have always been somewhat helpless, the holy merchant master said with emotion, looking at the tightly wrapped light sphere in front of him. The reason why the research on Bai Qian went so smoothly this time is due to the invaluable analysis of loquat in the past. It's just a pity that it's almost impossible to catch a third cat treasure. If we had a new seizing heaven cat for us to study. The holy merchant master smiled wryly, who said it's impossible. Everyone around was stunned when they heard this. Since the last time they sent Bai Qian, we have been unable to contact them. It seems that they have been retaliated against. Either they have fallen, or they have fled in panic. Without their help, the seizing heaven strange cats roam among the many possibilities of the mountains and seas, each with its own duties. However, their respective duties are mostly related to the tasks assigned by the open black lens bracket Taiwei Holy Emperor close black lens bracket. Although they are independent of each other, there is actually a subtle connection hidden among all the seizing heaven strange cats. We now have 2 cat treasures in hand. Naturally, we can follow the clues and find other cat treasures, the holy merchant master said confidently. But, the immortal ship people exchanged glances, most of them showing hesitation. The seizing heaven strange cats are extremely vengeful. It's already great luck that they haven't discovered us after capturing 2 in a row. If we act again, I'm afraid it's not necessarily. The holy merchant master waved his hand. I am aware of it myself. Although the Taiwei Holy Dynasty is terrifying, it is only a major force in the mountains and seas. It respects the Holy Emperor and is incompatible with other strong individuals. Although we are not the Holy Dynasty's opponent, there is no shortage of those who can rival it in the mountains and seas. Our act of capturing cat treasures is precisely a pledge to join them. The immortal ship people finally reacted. Holy Master, have you already made contact? As Tao annihilation approaches, even with the protection of eternity, I'm afraid it will be difficult to last for long. How can we not make plans early? Isn't it for the sake of finding a glimmer of hope that the past holy masters risked their lives to cross over to other possibilities? The holy merchant master said solemnly. The immortal ship people were excited when they heard this. Some even shed tears on the spot. From their sincere praises, Li Fan realized that after the merchant immortal ship jumped out of the high wall and barely escaped the immortal ruins, world-destroying disaster, the entire immortal ship still retained a strong sense of crisis. After learning the truth about the destruction of the immortal realm through some means, they were even more determined to try their best to escape this surviving place affected by Tao annihilation. Later, the first immortal ship master, who led the Xuansheng immortal ship to escape from the immortal cultivation realm, found a way to cross over to other possibilities. But the safety of those possibilities was unknown. So he took the initiative to go alone to investigate. Since then, this has become the tradition of the merchant immortal ship. The holy merchant masters of each generation must shoulder the responsibility of exploration and actively go to different possibilities, seeking relatively safe possibilities. Some never returned. And some are still alive. Only the holy merchant possesses the method of contacting these predecessors. Therefore, the other immortal ship people do not know much about things outside the original possibility. It was precisely because of the selfless pioneering behavior of the holy merchant masters of the past that the merchant immortal ship, even before leaving the original place, already had a basic understanding of the endless possibilities in the mountains and seas. Even more than Li Fan knew. Li Fan, who was eavesdropping on the side, nodded secretly, the accumulated legacy of hundreds of generations. This is the true foundation of the merchant immortal ship. No wonder they were able to successfully escape before the original was destroyed. Li Fan stared at the holy merchant master, who was talking eloquently not far away. The desire to carefully examine the memories in his head was almost uncontrollable. In his opinion, this holy merchant master could definitely be regarded as a living map. Seemingly sensing Li Fan's malice, the holy merchant master suddenly stopped his eloquent words. He frowned slightly and looked around suspiciously. But he couldn't detect the source of the unease that flashed through his heart. Could it be that the cat treasure is acting up? The holy merchant master carefully checked the orange cat loquat with some worry, and did not find any signs of him breaking free. As Li Fan restrained the malice in his heart, the unease in his heart gradually subsided. Only then did he return to the previous topic, that open black lens bracket Taiwei Holy Emperor close black lens bracket attempts to expand the holy dynasty to all the mountains and seas. Therefore, he reflects his power in countless possibilities of the mountains and seas. Anyone whose shape is similar to him will be affected by him, becoming the so-called Holy Emperor. If it happens that there is a seizing heaven cat performing a task in this possibility, the Holy Emperor will be assisted by the seizing heaven cat. There is a very high probability that he can unify the possibility and create a holy dynasty. At that moment, the open black lens bracket Taiwei Holy Emperor close black lens bracket will truly awaken his consciousness, and the pseudo-holy emperor affected by the reflection will ascend to the throne as the real one. The holy merchant master slowly explained the methods of the open black lens bracket Taiwei Holy Emperor close black lens bracket, and the immortal ship people on the side were amazed. In the 6191 book bar, there is no wrong version. Originally, I thought that the seizing heaven cat was already a creation of seizing heaven. Now it seems that these creations are just one link in the many methods of that vast holy dynasty. Compared to the behemoth of the Taiwei holy dynasty, our immortal ship is just like an ant. Yet we have repeatedly tried to bite off some meat from this beast. It's really too dangerous. The holy merchant master listened to the discussions of his subordinates, and after everyone's emotions calmed down, he continued, that Taiwei holy emperor is indeed very strong. But his behavior is also too domineering. Most of the strong people in the mountains and seas are going to that open black lens bracket other shore close black lens bracket to unite and jointly discuss ways to deal with the Tao annihilation catastrophe. Or some who are unwilling to participate are just circling another piece of land and keeping a distance from the other shore. This Taiwei Holy Emperor not only has no intention of joining the other shore. He even goes his own way, expanding the holy dynasty and not caring at all. It is said that he has repeatedly clashed with strong people in the other shore great world and has made many enemies. We temporarily do not have the qualifications and ability to go to that other shore great world. But a possibility that is incompatible with the Taiwei Holy Emperor and is very safe for a long time. The holy merchant master smiled slightly, with a look of confidence, causing the immortal ship people to praise him repeatedly. But before handing over the seizing heaven cat as a pledge, we had better complete its research as much as possible. Even if we can't completely analyze it, we must do our best within our capabilities. After all, relying on others is not the right way after all. In any case, only the power that we can master can be used as capital to survive. Everyone, don't forget how the Xuansheng immortal ship escaped from its homeland in the first place, the holy merchant said in a deep voice. Taiwei Holy Emperor, Holy Dynasty. Listening to the discussion of the immortal ship people, the appearance of Li Ping reappeared in Li Fan's mind. I see, I was wrong, the birth of the Holy Emperor, the closeness of the cat treasure. It's not that the original open black lens bracket Li Fan close black lens bracket still exists in other possibilities. But the avatar I derived has a good affinity with the Taiwei Holy Emperor. Therefore, in the dark, he was affected by him. Li Fan now recalls that the Holy Emperor avatar's loss of control was not achieved overnight, but formed slowly. Even at the beginning, the cat treasure did not show any color to the Holy Emperor, and only became closer and more obedient as the communication became more frequent. The Taiwei Holy Emperor sits in the Holy Dynasty, reflecting in hundreds of millions of possibilities. Even if he is within the high wall erected by Shukyu Gong, it is difficult to avoid his influence. The strength of his strength is evident. Li Fan was secretly shocked. The Taiwei Holy Emperor's method of cultivation is also a kind of unification of all selves. However, compared to the methods of Xie Su Bai and He Tianyi to devour other selves on different possibilities, it is even better. It's not just the self. Just a little similar, all within the scope of integration. What is swallowed is not just a single individual, but a unified holy dynasty as a unit. Li Fan could almost imagine that if the Taiwei Holy Emperor really did it and the holy dynasty spread throughout the mountains and seas, perhaps, he could really possess the power of the same level as the mountains and seas. However, doing so deprives other strong people of their living space. Even if Shukyugong and Zi are extremely disciplined, I am afraid it will be extremely difficult to submit to Taiwei. The Eternal Great Tao and the Taiwei Holy Emperor, these newly discovered strong people in the mountains and seas, have once again broadened Li Fan's vision. As expected, it is not surprising what kind of strong people are born in the countless possibilities of the mountains and seas. But in retrospect, every existence that has reached the peak of the mountains and seas is extremely unique and has taken a path that is different from others. As Li Fan imagined, the people of the merchant immortal ship, after a little rest, started the research on the cat treasure again. This time, the orange cat loquat's resistance was even stronger. The blue chains that bound him trembled even more violently. It seemed that they were about to collapse at any time. But the holy merchant master was not flustered at all. Ignoring the state of the entire immortal ship about to collapse. He was already accustomed to the various situations that occurred during the experiment. In his opinion, with the protection of the Eternal Great Tao, even if the merchant immortal ship turned into powder in an instant, it can be restored in an instant. So he not only did not stop, and also continued to draw energy from the merchant immortal ship, increasing the intensity of the confrontation with the orange cat. The immortal ship people who were watching were already accustomed to this. There was no fear on their faces. Only the joy of turning the power of the seizing heaven cat into their own use. Finally, the intensity of the power confrontation reached the critical value. A wave that destroyed everything suddenly erupted. 1590. 7 miraculous medicines for seizing the heaven. From the darkness, an incomparably dazzling light erupted. Wherever it passed, everything was utterly destroyed, turning to ashes in an instant. Eternity. Watching billions of lives on the merchant immortal ark disappear before his eyes, the Lord of Holy Merchants remained calm. He simply called out with a serene expression. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. As the burst of light gradually dimmed and subsided, the scene the Lord of Holy Merchants had anticipated, the merchant immortal ark restored to its former state, did not occur. A look of suspicion began to appear on the Lord of Holy Merchants' face. However, his first thought was not that the great Tao of eternity had failed. Instead, he called out, "Eternity," once more. The response was still the desolate void before him. The Lord of Holy Merchants began to panic. He repeated the call over and over, even holding the Tai prayer mat and personally going to the eternal immortal remains. His body trembled as he pointed to the place where the merchant immortal ark had once been. The eternal immortal remains, of course, did not respond. The Lord of Holy Merchants realized what had happened, but he suddenly found it impossible to accept. Reason gradually deserted him, and he even began to attack the eternal immortal remains. Bastard, bastard, bastard! Restore it for me! Endless blue symbols surged from his body, like a raging storm, sweeping towards the immortal remains with overwhelming force. The Lord of Holy Merchants' furious attack caused the dead starry sky to tremble once more. It was as if a boulder had fallen into a calm lake, and ripples of blue echoed continuously. And the eternal immortal remains, which had existed within the immortal ark for millions of years and had long been the foundation of its existence, shattered and disappeared like a bubble in this turmoil. The Lord of Holy Merchants stood there, completely stunned. The great Tao of eternity could not have been so easily defeated by him. His strength had not yet reached that level. So there was only one answer. The remains he had just destroyed were not eternity at all. The real eternal immortal remains had disappeared without a trace at some point. Almost instantly, the Lord of Holy Merchants thought of the immortal ark gatekeeper who had mysteriously disappeared not long ago, Wu Xin. Eternity had been hidden in the immortal ark for millions of years, and there had never been a mistake. Now it disappeared at the same time as Wu Xin. Ah, the Lord of Holy Merchants' eyes turned bloodshot with extreme anger. Countless familiar faces flashed through his mind. The thought that he had personally destroyed the entire immortal ark and the billions of lives within filled him with indescribable guilt and self-blame, almost completely collapsing his consciousness. Wu Xin, I will kill you. Kill you. Kill, 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 kill. In just a few breaths, the Lord of Holy Merchants, once considered a man of great talent and ambition, had fallen into madness. His mind was consumed with the single thought of killing Wu Xin and avenging himself. But Wu Xin had already been suppressed by Li Fan in the Xuanwang immortal realm. No matter what means the Lord of Holy Merchants used, he could not find her trace. So he became even more enraged, wanting to destroy everything in front of him. In a daze, he left the starry sky where the merchant immortal ark had been and headed towards the Shuo Star Sea. The massive shock caused by the destruction of the Merchant Immortal Ark had also attracted the attention of the cultivators in the Shuo Star Sea. The two sides met and inexplicably began to fight to the death. The Lord of Holy Merchants had lost all reason and did not recognize anyone. The Shuo Star Sea cultivators, caught off guard and suffering heavy losses, were also provoked and united to kill this madman. So I say, don't take worldly possessions too seriously. My whole family died in the battle between Ko Hongdao and Xuanzi back then, and I still laughed it off. If I had been overwhelmed by extreme grief at that time, how could I be where I am today? Li Fan, hiding in the distance and watching the show, commented without any sense of the other's pain. Although the Lord of Holy Merchants was mad, the information in his mind about the various possibilities in the mountains and seas was still of great value. Li Fan would naturally not let him go so easily. Let them fight it out. When they are both severely injured, I will clean them up together. Neither the Lord of Holy Merchants nor the Shuo Star Sea was so easily defeated or suppressed. Li Fan temporarily withdrew his gaze and looked at the original site of the Merchant Immortal Ark. After that violent explosion, the entire starry sky had turned into a dead silence. It seemed that nothing had remained. But Li Fan knew that Pai Pa and Bai Qian, the two heaven-snatching cats, had not escaped. They were still hiding in this area. Come out, Li Fan said calmly to the empty starry sky, revealing his hidden form. The two heaven-snatching cats did not react at all. Li Fan smiled faintly, so they were playing hide-and-seek with him. With a grab of both hands, the entire starry sky before him was cut off and turned into a square cage. With the rapid retraction of the myriad manifestations down it, Li Fan returned to the Xuanwang Immortal Realm with this cage and the cat treasures inside. Leaving only a wisp of divine sense to monitor the situation in the Shuo Star Sea, so that he could take action at any time. And as if sensing the Xuanwang Immortal Realm's completely different environment from the ordinary starry sky, the two hidden heaven-snatching cats jumped out as soon as they arrived here. This kind of hiding method. Li Fan's eyes flashed. The heaven-snatching cats' bodies seemed to completely dissolve, assimilating with the surrounding environment. Becoming a part of the great Tao of heaven and earth. Thus, they could hide perfectly. Even if Li Fan knew they were hiding here, he could not distinguish them. However, this disguise of the cat treasures was obviously not applicable to the Xuanwang Immortal Realm. Therefore, they revealed their flaws as soon as they entered here. However, this does not mean that they cannot hide here. They just need some time to adapt. Li Fan looked at the two heaven-snatching cats in front of him, one orange and one black and white. He noticed that their bodies were undergoing corresponding changes according to the environment of the Xuanwang Immortal Realm at an extremely terrifying speed. Li Fan had only seen this kind of adaptability in the newborn Mo Sha. Pai Pa rate of change is even better than Bai Qian's. Is this the so-called 7 prototypes of heaven snatching? The two heaven-snatching cats snuggled together, warily looking at Li Fan not far away. As their bodies slowly began to integrate into the Xuanwang Immortal Realm, Li Fan, the Xuanwang parent, began to find these two cats more and more pleasing to the eye. If Li Fan felt this way, let alone the Xuanwang Heavenly Tao. The intangible hostility of heaven and earth, which was condensed against foreign invaders, dissipated inexplicably. The two heaven-snatching cats so easily achieved the transformation from outsiders to favored beings of heaven. This was obviously the influence brought about by the cat treasures' own evolution. If the heavenly physician had such means back then, there would have been no need for the heavenly demon reincarnation. Li Fan saw all the subtle changes in his eyes and was somewhat amazed in his heart. Only he, as the Xuanwang parent, knew how incredible the cat treasures' changes were. Just now in the Shuo Star Sea, because they were in the lower realm starry sky. The strength of the two heaven-snatching cats was only barely at the level of an unknown true immortal. But now, it was as if a cultivator had ascended to the immortal realm in broad daylight. The heaven-snatching cats were rapidly transforming, and the aura flowing around them had surpassed that of ordinary unknowns. Moreover, this trend of enhancement had not stopped. It seemed that they would continue to climb towards the realm of transcendence. Rather than saying that they have progressed to this point in a short period of time, it is better to say that the upper limit set when the heaven-snatching cats were created was this level. Now they are just returning to their original appearance. Being entrusted with an important task by the Taiwei Holy Emperor and sent to other possibilities, having the strength to transcend is not surprising. After all, the definition of transcendence is being able to cross the mountains and seas and freely go to other possibilities. But it is only the same realm. The heaven-snatching cat's crossing is more like using some kind of clever method. Compared with transcendent cultivators, their actual combat power is definitely far inferior. The heaven-snatching cats were adapting to the environment and integrating into the Xuanwang Immortal realm. And Li Fan was also using the Xuanwang Immortal realm to perceive the two heaven-snatching cats in front of him. Just like seeing through the true face of the eternal immortal remains of the merchant immortal arc. As his understanding of the essence of the cat treasures deepened, the images of the one orange and one black and white cat treasures in front of Li Fan were also slowly changing. The cat hair receded, the cat skin dissolved, and the cat bones disappeared. The core inside was actually two plants. Or rather, medicinal herbs. Corresponding to their names. One was Pai Pa Loquat and the other was Bai Qian Willow Leaf Swallowwort Rhizome and Root. Boom! The images of the two medicinal herbs shattered in an instant, and Li Fan felt a slight dizziness in his head. After a moment, he vaguely seemed to see a figure standing tall. The figure was tall and he could not see its face clearly. Grasping Pai Pa and Bai Qian, or other medicinal herbs. Carefully observing, and the medicinal herbs that passed through his hands were all instantly reborn. They had all kinds of miraculous effects that were difficult to achieve in the past. In front of the figure, countless medicinal herbs were spread all over. Among them, 7 were the most dazzling. The 7 prototypes of heaven snatching, so it turns out to be the 7 miraculous medicines of heaven snatching. Sensing this scene, Li Fan suddenly understood in his heart. Since the essence was medicinal herbs, then the greatest effect of the cat treasures was naturally inseparable from medicine. The so-called creation of living beings and item replication were just the most basic abilities given to the cat treasures after they were created. 1591. Dao Yi turns into ink and kills. The true divine effect of the heaven-snatching cats corresponds precisely to their name. To see people from heaven's perspective. The pharmacological effects of past medicinal herbs on the human body, once transformed into heaven-snatching cats, correspondingly affect heaven. All things live, die, and are reborn in cycles, like the breathing and flowing of heaven and earth. Bai Qian manages life and death, aligning with nature. In the beginning, there was the great sage Jingfen, who managed the vanishing and destruction of the Tao, ensuring the eternal existence of the immortal realm. Yet, the Grand Cipher Sacred Dynasty, with just one dose of Bai Qian, could achieve nearly half the effect of the great sage Jingfen. The great Tao ascends, without beginning or end. Loquat intercepts the birth of the Tao, nurturing all things. In the Xuanwang realm, there is a tree named Ruamu, which governs the vitality of the world. However, the vitality of Ruamu comes from the Xuanwang realm itself. When Xuanwang prospers, Ruamu naturally flourishes without worry. But if Xuanwang weakens, Ruamu will also wither and decay. Yet, the vitality of Loquat is intercepted from the Tao. Transcending the limitations of a single possibility, wherever the great Tao flows, Loquat can intercept the Tao and be born. One dose of Loquat can protect the world's vitality, unmoving for eternity. Li Fan was shaken by the effects of the heaven-snatching miraculous medicine and couldn't help but look at the other herbs. The magnificent figure standing before the myriad medicinal herbs must undoubtedly be the Grand Cipher Sacred Emperor. As if sensing Li Fan's prying gaze, his figure slightly turned, his eyes meeting Li Fan's. Time seemed to freeze at this moment, falling into stillness. Perhaps it was because of Li Fan's habitual illusion as truth divine blessing, or perhaps it was because returning to truth was already in slumber, and the power of the great Tao of longevity was also expelled from Li Fan's body. In any case, the Grand Cipher Sacred Emperor did not notice Li Fan's special nature due to this momentary eye contact. But he also did not sever Li Fan's prying gaze. He even seemed to smile slightly, waving his hand generously, allowing Li Fan to see as much as he wanted. The scene before his eyes suddenly magnified tens of millions of times. Countless heaven-snatching miraculous medicines, densely packed, like continuous dark clouds, covered the entire field of vision. Not only ordinary medicinal herbs, but even the extremely dazzling 7 heaven-snatching miraculous medicines that Li Fan had seen before, were countless in number and difficult to calculate. Li Fan finally understood. What he saw was clearly a large area of medicinal gardens. Each type of heaven-snatching miraculous medicine was planted by the Grand Cipher Sacred Emperor within its corresponding medicinal garden. Endless and magnificent. The Grand Cipher Sacred Emperor relied on the endless divine medicines planted in these medicinal gardens to build and open up the Grand Cipher Sacred Dynasty that spanned mountains and seas. And the reason why he was so generous in displaying his secrets in the face of Li Fan's prying was precisely because of the Emperor's demeanor. This is not some grand cipher sacred emperor, this is simply the Azure Emperor. In Li Fan's heart, he almost lost himself in this boundless sea of divine medicine. He discovered that his heart was faintly showing signs of being subdued by the grand cipher sacred emperor's demeanor. He quickly took the initiative to sever his prying gaze. After a long time, his mood finally calmed down slightly. I didn't expect that the grand cipher sacred emperor would be so strong. Just from the moment I peered at one of his countless medicinal herbs through the Xuanwang Immortal realm, he could simultaneously sense the situation on my side. Knowing that I suppressed and imprisoned the two heaven-snatching cats. But the grand cipher sacred emperor doesn't care at all. Heaven-snatching miraculous medicines are simply countless in the grand cipher sacred dynasty. The gap between him and a powerhouse like the grand cipher sacred emperor was concretely revealed. Inevitably, a faint sense of frustration arose in Li Fan's heart. He even had various thoughts of surrendering. Having reached Li Fan's current realm, his heart was like a clear mirror, and the origin and destination of all thoughts were completely under his control. Li Fan naturally knew that this was the grand cipher sacred emperor's deterrent method. It was also one of the reasons why he deliberately showed him that sacred emperor's medicinal garden. If it were an ordinary person, just this one glance would probably be enough to completely submit to the sacred emperor's might and take the initiative to defect to the grand cipher. Even a transcendent realm powerhouse would probably find it difficult to avoid this influence. Fortunately, a faint cold light flashed in Li Fan's eyes. He quickly crushed and eliminated the many strange thoughts in his heart, restoring his normal state of mind. Although the grand cipher sacred emperor is strong, he has not yet reached the point of being equal to the mountains and seas. I can even abandon the great Tao of longevity, which is comparable to the mountains and seas. How could I be intimidated and bewitched by you? Snorting coldly, not being the grand cipher sacred emperor's opponent did not prevent Li Fan from taking action against the sacred emperor's medicinal herbs. Knowing the details of the heaven-snatching cats, Li Fan acted without any scruples. Ink kill. Black dark clouds rolled in, heavily surrounding the two heaven-snatching cats. As if sensing the arrival of a fatal crisis, the two heaven-snatching cats first stood on end, constantly growling. When the ink-kill dark clouds continued to approach, and they discovered that they could not resist the other party's erosion. After hesitating for a moment, the two heaven-snatching cats finally made a decision. In a high-pitched cry, the two heaven-snatching cats transformed into black and white, orange-yellow light clusters, one after the other. The two light clusters approached each other, stalemated for a short while, and then quickly merged. The black and white halo merged into the orange-yellow. It did not dilute the orange-yellow color, but instead made it even more dazzling. This is, using medicine to supplement medicine, taking heaven-snatching a step further. Li Fan was also a person who understood pharmacology. Seeing the transformation of the two heaven-snatching cats, he soon knew the reason. At the same time, the loquat, after swallowing Bai Qian, also transformed again. In the orange-yellow fur, there were more black and white stripes. The overall body shape was also several times larger. It looked less like a cat and more like a newborn tiger. Facing the tidal wave of ink-kill dark clouds, Loquat was not afraid. With a light whistle, it released a large amount of vital yellow light, which was like a dam, temporarily resisting the encroachment of ink-kill. Seeing ink-kill fail, Li Fan was not surprised but delighted. This is, carrying the calamity of Tao annihilation, traversing the mountains and seas. Using medicine to supplement medicine, this heaven-snatching cat, Loquat, has truly reached the transcendent realm. Relying on the orange-yellow light to protect its body, Loquat charged and dashed in the ink-kill dark clouds, showing a tendency to break through the encirclement. And even though the ink-kill dark clouds were like boiling, they could not do anything to the other party for a while. If there was no Xuanwang Immortal Realm as support, Loquat would probably have broken through the ink-kill's blockade long ago. Although it cannot completely offset the calamity of Tao annihilation, it can rely on its own strength to find a safe place to pass through before being swallowed by Tao annihilation. This is the most basic principle of traversing the mountains and seas. The stronger the strength, the longer one can stay in Tao annihilation. Traversing the mountains and seas becomes more calm and unhurried. Li Fan recalled the heavenly great Tao displayed by Zi before, and the solitary sail of the transcendent remains fished up from Guangwu Star Sea. Comparing and contrasting with the scene before him, the The various things that he could not understand in the past, at this moment, like an eruption, constantly emerged in his mind. Faced with Loquat, who had the transcendent realm, Inktkill was at a disadvantage. But its ability to devour and analyze did not fail. A large amount of pharmacological knowledge about heaven-snatching miraculous medicine and Loquat gradually emerged in Li Fan's mind. This can be regarded as Loquat's Tao of transcendence. It's a pity that this principle only applies to medicine and cannot be applied to people. Although it has extreme limitations, Li Fan doesn't mind. He still regards it as a rare insight, carefully pondering it in his heart. Although I cannot use the medicinal principles of the Loquat for my own purposes, I can integrate it into my profound yellow immortal world through the refining Tao Medicine King scripture. Since it is a medicinal material, no matter how extraordinary it may be, it is still just a medicinal material. Returning to the right path is your destiny. The Loquat is indeed one of the 7 prototypes of seizing heaven. The intercepting vitality within is truly endless. It rushed left and right in the Inktkill Yin cloud for a full 33 days, yet there was no sign of weakening. And Li Fan had already mastered the Loquat's medicinal principles to a considerable extent through the absorption of Inktkill. Immediately, he coldly pointed at the orange cat in the Yin cloud, and the Inktkill surged, instantly transforming into a huge pill furnace. Although it was only a change in shape, the restricting effect on the Loquat seemed to have increased hundreds of times in an instant. The infinitely energetic and swift orange cat seemed to have its limbs bound. It was no longer as swift as before, but slowly and incomparably tried to continue its impact. Moreover, the surrounding orange-yellow light protecting its body was like being blown by a strong wind, no longer as stable as Mount Tai, but swaying, as if it would collapse at any time. The Inktkill pill furnace stood in the profound yellow immortal world, above the outer heavens. Li Fan personally took charge. First, he asked Eternal, Senior Uncle, to take a look. Then, he wrote a volume of illusory scriptures with vigorous strokes and threw it into the Inktkill pill furnace. This volume of scriptures was the Mountain and Sea Genesis chapter, obtained from Shanhua in the previous life. The Mountain and Sea Genesis was the insight of the Tai sage monarch, observing the Lian Mountain and Gui Hai sages, from nothing to something, pioneering the immortal world process. It contains both the principles of mountains and seas and the Tao of Tai. The foundation of Inktkill is Tai and Eternal. At this moment, under Li Fan's guidance, both foundations have been further strengthened. Although it cannot compare to the 2 great powerhouses taking action themselves, it is equivalent to a certain degree of borrowing. Like adding oil to a raging fire, the power of the newborn Inktkill instantly expanded several times. The pill furnace solidified, lifelike, as if transformed from illusion to reality. The ink color greatly increased, instantly completely suppressing the last bit of orange-yellow color in the furnace. In front of the temporarily strengthened newborn Inktkill, even the Loquat in the transcendent realm could only be suppressed. The newborn Inktkill was born in the profound yellow immortal world. But at this moment, after being strengthened by the power of the 2 major origins, it had already faintly exceeded the shackles of the profound yellow immortal world itself. Fortunately, Li Fan was the host in charge, who could withdraw the support of Eternal and Tai at any time. Otherwise, it might have further devoured the profound yellow immortal world after swallowing the Loquat. It's like seeking skin from a tiger. But it has to be used. Li Fan's trump card was not only Inktkill. With a thought, countless constantly jumping black spots in various parts of the profound yellow immortal world gathered towards the outer heavens. Compared to the Inktkill Yin cloud visible to everyone, these black spots could only be seen by Li Fan alone. It was the Tao One insect. Inktkill is ultimately a creation of others. There are many uncontrollable factors and hidden dangers. And the Tao One insect is truly created and promoted by me from scratch. Loquat can swallow Bacchion, Tao One can swallow mountains and seas. Inktkill is shaped like Tao Annihilation. Tao One can transform Inktkill. When Inktkill transformed into a pill furnace, focusing on refining the seizing heaven cat within. Without its awareness, the Tao One insect on the outside of the pill furnace was also trying to erode it. Li Fan could see that the progress of Tao One insect's erosion and assimilation was extremely slow. But what they did was not useless. Li Fan quietly shared his understanding of Inktkill with these Tao One insects, which slightly accelerated their assimilation speed. But what the Tao One insect saw of Inktkill was probably different from what Li Fan saw. So Li Fan's help was only minimal. But it doesn't matter. Being able to start is half the battle. Li Fan continued to urge Inkkill to focus its attention on dealing with the loquat, to give the Dao 1 insect more space to erode. And Inkkill did not live up to expectations. Black smoke billowed, completely swallowing the last bit of loquat remaining in the pill furnace. Next, as Li Fan had expected, after completely swallowing the loquat, Inkkill did not stop there. The pill furnace expanded, wanting to include the outer heavens of the profound yellow immortal world. Fortunately, Li Fan was prepared and timely withdrew the blessing of eternal and Tai's power. Losing the support of the two major origins, the expanded Inkkill instantly returned to its original state. The abnormality also stopped. Under Li Fan's gaze, it finally calmed down. The yin cloud churned, spitting out strands of orange-yellow light, transforming into an orange condensed, almost golden pill. This is the intercepting vitality of the loquat. A different color flashed in Li Fan's eyes. After playing with it in his hand for a long time, Li Fan did not swallow it. Instead, he crushed the intercepting Dao loquat pill and sprinkled it, scattering it throughout the profound yellow world. On this day, a fiery sunset appeared in the sky of the profound yellow immortal world, reflecting half of the sky. It did not dissipate until the moon rose to the middle of the sky. Since then, the vitality of the profound yellow immortal world has quietly changed. The creatures between heaven and earth are unaware of this. Because at present, whether it is the quantity or quality of vitality, there has been no obvious change. Once the disaster arrives, the difference will be revealed. Even if I bring down a world-destroying disaster, exterminating all living beings except those named on the God investiture list. Under the circumstances that I do not deliberately manipulate it, and rely entirely on the profound yellow immortal world to recover on its own, it will only take about 3 years from a dead silence to becoming vibrant again. Li Fan's eyes showed the terrifying recovery scene of the profound yellow immortal world under the blessing of the intercepting vitality. Intercepting Dao, intercepting Dao. Where does this interception of vitality ultimately come from? Li Fan couldn't help but look outside the profound yellow. In his perception, there was indeed a faint vitality, like immortal music, ethereal and coming. But it came without any trace, and the source could not be found at all. After observing for a long time, Li Fan had a vague answer in his heart. It is not stealing from other possibilities, but intercepting from the great Tao itself. Coming from the circulation of Tao birth and Tao destruction. As long as the great Tao continues to exist and has not fallen into a state of silence, this loquat's intercepting vitality can continuously obtain vitality. Is this the seizing heaven's strange medicine? Thinking of the countless other medicinal materials in that Saint Emperor medicine garden, Li Fan once again had a clear understanding of the strength of that proud Taiwei Saint Emperor. 1592. Solidify the principles of heaven and earth. Although the Xuanwang immortal realm did not naturally give birth to the Tao principles related to open black lens bracket interception of life close black lens bracket, Li Fan endowed it with this ability through the refinement Tao medicine king scripture, using open black lens bracket loquat close black lens bracket as medicine. This transformation at the level of the great Tao is almost akin to innate birth. Initially, it might still be somewhat stagnant. But as time slowly passes, it will naturally become a part of the Xuanwang immortal realm's circulating heavenly Tao. Using the Tao to make medicine, and using medicine to refine the Tao. The method of the Grand Subtlety Saint is somewhat similar to Sun Piaomiao's refinement Tao medicine king scripture. However, Sun Piaomiao regards it as the foundation of cultivation, while in the eyes of the Grand Subtlety Saint Emperor, the thousands of medicinal herbs in the medicine garden are merely tools. The fundamental path of the Saint Emperor is still that supreme holy dynasty that spans mountains and seas. Compared to the magnificent Grand Subtlety Holy Dynasty, the Xuanwang immortal realm created by Li Fan is simply not worth mentioning. However, Li Fan did not feel crude. Although Xuanwang is small, it has infinite possibilities. The Holy Dynasty is indeed vast, but its path is already fixed. If it wants to be on par with mountains and seas, there will inevitably be a battle with many strong individuals in the other shore world in the future. Whether it can truly take the final step is also unknown. As for my Xuanwang immortal realm, Li Fan stretched out his palm, examining a small black dot that quietly appeared in his palm. It was the Dao 1 insect, which had absorbed and assimilated part of Mo Sha's power. Mo Sha had already successfully refined the loquat. To prevent it from noticing, the Dao 1 insect's secret erosion was temporarily halted. Although it had only silently absorbed for more than 30 days, the Dao 1 insect had undergone earth-shattering changes compared to the past. The biggest change, which could be said to have reached a qualitative change, was the Tao 1 insect's method of devouring external objects. Before learning from Mo Sha, the Tao 1 insect's method of erosion had not yet broken away from the characteristics of biological feeding. It was like a worm chewing, or a cultivator absorbing and refining. But after they imitated Mo Sha, the Tao 1 insect's means of devouring had leapt to the level of almost annihilation. The efficiency of feeding, as well as the ability to devour, had increased dozens of times over. Even because of the Tao 1 insect's own characteristic of constantly evolving, compared to Mo Sha, whose abilities were basically fixed and required external stimulation to take a further step, the Tao 1 insect's erosion ability was still rapidly improving by leaps and bounds. The current Tao 1 insect swarm can almost be regarded as a close relative of Mo Sha. Tai and the power of eternity have an enhancing effect on Mo Sha. Then it should also be effective on the Tao 1 insect swarm. Thinking of this, Li Fan through the open black lens bracket initial creation of Mountains and Seas chapter close black lens bracket and an eternal power condensed coat towards the Tao 1 insect swarm. Countless black dots swarmed over, slowly engulfing the two objects. Unlike Mo Sha, which was instantly enhanced, the Tao 1 insect swarm's transformation was slow but steady. Although it is called a swarm of insects, it actually has nothing to do with the true meaning of insect. The spirits and monsters of the Xuanwang immortal realm do not have life. Rather, they are manifestations of the power of heaven and earth. It's just a habitual way of calling them by Li Fan. Now, the essence of the Tao 1 insect swarm is to use the Xuanwang immortal realm as a container to cultivate another form of power that is extremely similar in nature to Mo Sha. Because it was born within the Xuanwang immortal realm, it is controlled by Li Fan, the Xuanwang parent. The Tao 1 insect has not completely absorbed the inner essence of Mo Sha. We still need to find something for Mo Sha to do, to distract its attention as much as possible. Within the Xuanwang immortal realm, and even within the original possibility, the newborn Mo Sha is almost invincible and difficult to defeat. If you want to find a suitable opponent, you must also look beyond the original possibility. However, with the current level of the Xuanwang immortal realm, it is not enough to support Li Fan's safe crossing of the mountains and seas. Therefore, Li Fan first thought of the fishing pond. Or rather, the mountain and sea fishing ground. However, after careful consideration, Li Fan finally decided to temporarily not touch the idea of the fishing pond. After all, being able to connect to the mountains and seas, the strength of the immortal fisherman behind the fishing pond is also extraordinary. Just like when I peek at the scene of the Grand Subtlety Holy Dynasty through the loquat, I will be seen by the Grand Subtlety Saint Emperor. When I look at and use the fishing pond, I am destined to be sensed by that immortal fisherman. In the short term, I may still be able to rely on illusion truth to cover it up. But in the long run, the risk of exposure will inevitably increase exponentially. And what I need is a means to stably capture things from outside the original. Li Fan then thought of the salvage method he saw in the star sea of light in his previous life. By distributing heavenly pillars with different load-bearing capacities, weak points are deliberately created to attract the descent of Tao annihilation. An annihilation depression is formed, in the hope that the drifting objects in Tao annihilation can be attracted. Li Fan had successfully reproduced this method in the still true no-gap reincarnation. It's just that the salvage harvest is too unstable. If you're unlucky, even after 100 years, you may not gain anything. On the contrary, it will increase the risk of being swallowed by Tao annihilation in vain. Fortunately, the star sea of light has already taken a step ahead for me. In addition to the Tao era projection and the remnants of transcendence, there should still be many things from outside the original. When the first He Tao is born in the Xuanwang immortal realm, on the conferred God list, true immortals are listed. The Xuanwang expedition can be officially launched. Thinking this way, Li Fan suddenly concentrated his thoughts on Zhan Yuan Tuo. This Dharma transmission celestial venerable, who has been almost forgotten by everyone in the Xuanwang immortal realm, has always attracted Li Fan's attention. You must know that Dharma transmission was already in the He Tao realm before the great change of Xuanwang heaven and earth. As Xuanwang sublimated and transformed into an immortal realm, the heaven and earth soul open black lens bracket golden execution close black lens bracket in his body was already 10 million times stronger than in the past. However, Dharma transmission is still stuck in the strength of the past. Theoretically speaking, from the moment Li Fan lifted the seal, Dharma transmission should have been blown up by the swelling power in his body. But now, Dharma transmission has not only not fallen, but also, like 4 ounces moving 1,000 pounds, still controls the golden execution that has completed the transformation with the Xuanwang realm in his hands. Although in Li Fan's opinion, it is somewhat extreme. It is as if countless thin threads are pulling on it, and even if the golden execution moves slightly, there is a risk of the control breaking apart. But after all, this kind of controllability really exists. In a sense, the current Dharma transmission is actually the first person to achieve Hidao in the Xuanwang Immortal realm. But only limited to his current state of tranquility. Once the Tao enlightenment balance is broken, Dharma transmission will instantly be reduced to ashes. This is also the reason why he has always been in seclusion and motionless. Being in a situation where he could fall at any time, Dharma transmission not only did not panic, but instead used this special, Hidao, realm as a stepping stone to seek a method for true Hidao. This is truly, either success or benevolence. Li Fan secretly praised in his heart. Such a huge pressure, but he can treat it indifferently. As expected of the Dharma transmission celestial venerable who suppressed Xuanwang for 10,000 years in later generations. Only prove Hidao, not prove longevity. This is the deepest thought that Li Fan can glimpse, lingering in the heart of Dharma transmission. And it is precisely by relying on this belief as a guide that Dharma transmission can still control the other party by relying on the weak connection between the past and the open black lens bracket golden execution close black lens bracket. Li Fan has a hunch that Dharma transmission seems to be caught in some kind of entanglement at this moment. After some in-depth investigation, Li Fan understood where the hesitation in Dharma transmission's heart came from. It turns out that he already has a method to achieve Hidao safely in his heart. But if this method is adopted, he will stop at Xuanwang Hidao from then on, and will no longer be able to surpass the heavens of Xuanwang. In the past, the new method of reversing the principles of heaven and earth, and then only controlling the affairs of heaven and earth, can no longer be done. After understanding what Dharma transmission was thinking, Li Fan couldn't help but smile. Obviously he had already realized this, but he was still hesitant when he was about to take the last step. In 16191 Book 1 Bar 1 see no wrong version. It seems that Dharma transmission is the same as Tianyang, and he also doesn't want to be weaker than others in his heart. However, the Dharma in Dharma transmission's ideal is destined to have an absolute conflict with Li Fan, the Xuanwang parent. How could Li Fan hand over the Xuanwang immortal realm? If you really choose this way, then don't blame me for not being affectionate. Of course, if you let go of the obsession in your heart and are willing to be a running dog under my command, then I won't be stingy and help you along the way. Li Fan smiled slightly. Seemingly sensing Li Fan's inner thoughts, Zhan Yuan Tuo, who had been sitting for a long time, finally made a decision in his heart. Letting go of the obsession in his heart, he let out a long breath, and his whole person's expression became relaxed. Opening his eyes, he slowly got up. Because of his actions, the vast and unparalleled heaven and earth soul, golden execution, which far exceeded the limit he could bear, instantly showed signs of losing control and exploding. However, all the changes were inexplicably stopped by the 2 sentences that Dharma transmission slowly chanted in his mouth. Transform the heaven and earth soul, to achieve Hidao. Solidify the principles of heaven and earth, to prove longevity. Just 2 light sentences, but like thunder, resounding through the sky. Louder and louder, constantly echoing between Xuanwang heaven and earth. The heaven and earth soul, golden execution, no longer showed signs of losing control and exploding. Because Dharma transmission, or rather Zhan Yuan Tuo, has now transformed into him. Wearing a layer of golden light, and the heaven and earth soul, golden execution, which had no face in the past, slowly revealed the appearance of Dharma transmission on his face. After a moment, Dharma transmission took a step forward towards golden execution. The 2 then merged into one. Before taking the last step, a trace of imperceptible loneliness flashed in Zhan Yuan Tuo's eyes. But it only lasted for a short moment before he completely suppressed it. Since a decision has been made, then there is no more regret. A golden light soared into the sky, reaching straight to the 9 heavens. Passing through the conferred God list in the sky, directly reaching the 4 heavenly gates. From the 4 heavenly gates, each shot out a ray of light, concentrated on Zhan Yuan Tuo's body. The barrier between the outer heavens and the ground was penetrated by this infinite and brilliant light. The beings on the surface of the earth were able to clearly see the various things that happened at the 4 heavenly gates because of it. Buzz buzz buzz, the howling sound from the mountains and seas came from outside the heavenly gate. The door opened, and infinite immortal power, like a divine gift, rolled down. This is immortality. Zhan Yuantuo looked at the continuous mountain and sea scene that appeared in front of him, and couldn't help but be stunned. I don't know why, but he didn't have much excitement, even though he had taken the step that countless people dreamed of. And not far away, Li Fan, hidden behind the scenes, laughed loudly, something he hadn't done in a long time. This is the real thing, there is a great way ahead that cannot be taken. Xuanwang Holy Venerable is above. 1593. Xuanwang Hidaoshan. Li Fan's unrestrained laughter could only be detected by himself within the entire Xuanwang immortal realm. The attention of all living beings in the world was now focused on that radiant figure standing alone beyond the heavens. The four great heavenly gates shone with united splendor, sleeves fluttering, like a true immortal. Proudly independent, above the myriad stars and even higher than the function list. Transform the essence of heaven and earth, unite with the Tao, solidify the principles of heaven and earth, to prove longevity. These words continued to echo in the world, and the masses, looking up at the first He Dao cultivator of the Xuanwang immortal realm, finally recalled the identity of this figure. Immortal Venerable Xuanfa. Some wept bitterly, some were incredulous, and some nodded excitedly. Even if the world changes dramatically, Xuanfa is still Xuanfa. Upon enlightenment, he not only became the first to achieve He Dao and ascend to immortality but also illuminated a path to immortality for the beings of Xuanwang. The method of Xuanfa, when explained, is simple. In summary, it's just 6 words. If you can't beat them, join them. The Xuanwang realm had undergone dramatic changes, with an overall leap in sublimation that was too great. The gap between heaven and earth and cultivators was infinitely widened. The past cultivation methods of delusionally swallowing heaven and earth and ascending to heaven in one step were naturally no longer applicable. Thus, Xuanfa changed his thinking. Since he couldn't be an enemy, he might as well surrender. Transforming into a part of the order of heaven and earth, using the magnificent power of heaven and earth to assist his own cultivation. The old cultivation methods emphasized the enlightenment of the unity of heaven and man. The relationship between cultivators and heaven and earth was equal. Xuanfa once created a new method, which adopted the strategy of peeling skin and extracting bones. The relationship between cultivators and heaven and earth was adversarial. But now, if this new method is adopted, the relationship between heaven and earth and cultivators becomes one of superior and subordinate. Moreover, the first surrenderer was the former leader of the opposing cultivators. How could this not make the Xuanwang heavenly Tao feel inexplicably surprised? Xuanfa's ability to transform into the essence of heaven and earth overnight and instantly achieve He Dao was also inseparable from his special status as the first to surrender. Under Li Fan's deliberate instructions, Xuanfa's 2 maxims echoed into the hearts of every sacred spirit in the world. Although a very small number of cultivators felt an instinctive rejection of this method of rapidly cultivating by becoming a running dog of heaven and earth, the vast majority quickly accepted it without obstacles. And by analogy, they understood the cultivation methods of many realms between He Dao. The essence is to devote oneself to heaven and earth. It is foreseeable that in the near future, the cultivators of the Xuanwang immortal realm will usher in an explosive growth in realm breakthroughs. And within the cultivator community, there will be 2 naturally opposed camps, those who surrender to heaven and earth and ordinary cultivators. The situation between the 2 sides can be described as endless, until one side completely disappears. And with Li Fan behind the scenes, it is self-evident who will be the final winner. Above the sky, the brilliance from the 4 great heavenly gates gradually dimmed. But the heavenly gates did not immediately close, and the endless scenery of mountains and seas revealed within was thus exposed to the eyes of the Xuanwang beings. The beings were lost in thought, and then a yearning arose in their hearts. Limitless sea, mountain above. Although at this moment, the world did not know their names. But they instinctively felt their own insignificance. The few scenes of mountains and seas revealed in the gates will also become their lifelong pursuit next. The grand event will eventually come to an end. The 4 great heavenly gates slowly returned to their original state, disappearing from everyone's sight. Just when the Xuanwang beings thought that Xuanfa's He Dao ascension to immortality was complete, a majestic figure, incomparably familiar to the world, reappeared above the sky. Even though they had just seen the mountains and seas, the world did not kneel down and beg. But now, with the emergence of this figure, all living beings in Xuanwang prostrated themselves in worship. Because this figure is none other than the Hunyuan Xuanwang Yuxiling Xiao's sacred Venerable. Do not worship mountains and seas, only worship the sacred Venerable. This belief had already been subtly rooted in the hearts of the Xuanwang beings. The great deity descended again, and in comparison, Xuanfa, who had just ascended to immortality, was like an ant in front of him. The Xuanwang sacred venerable stretched out his finger and gently pressed down on Xuanfa's head. Looking at the huge finger descending from above, like a mountain, Xuanfa seemed to understand something, and there was no fear in his heart. But he accepted it calmly. In full view of the public, the sacred venerable's finger touched the top of Xuanfa's head. In an instant, endless light burst forth from the sacred venerable's fingertips. Except for Xuanfa, all other living beings in the Xuanwang immortal realm subconsciously closed their eyes. They understood in their hearts that this was the sacred venerable's gift to Xuanfa, and others were not qualified to observe. When the light dissipated, the sacred venerable's majestic figure had also disappeared. The gap between the earth and the heavens outside the heavens had not completely faded away. People could vaguely see that within the 4 great heavenly gates on the vast sky, there seemed to be an additional magnificent palace. The 4 large characters Shantuo Dojo were written on it. It was bestowed by the great Xuanwang sacred venerable according to the name of Xuanfa. While the crowd was envious, the voice of a clear-sounding Taoist child also faintly came from Shantuo Dojo. The great Lord ascends to the 9 heavens, proving the Tao is the first immortal of Xuanwang. The sacred venerable bestows blessings, allowing him to bring 99 seats, to ascend to the Shaogong Palace, and the Tao is equal to the heavens. Upon hearing this, the crowd was slightly stunned at first. Then their hearts seemed to be suddenly grasped, and they beat violently and uncontrollably. The meaning of this voice was that Xuanfa could bring 99 people to ascend to the immortal realm. It was truly, one person achieves the Tao, and even chickens and dogs ascend to heaven. Although it was obvious that these carriers must have a considerable gap compared to the true He Tao ascenders. But no matter what, they were also people who ascended to the 9 heavens. Compared to being on the earth, they were countless times higher. Without much hesitation, someone immediately knelt down and shouted, "Xuanfa is above, I am your old subordinate. Back in the Kongyan Marsh, I personally listened to you preaching. Immortal Venerable, it's your subordinate. Now I am facing a crisis of death, and if there is no way to break the situation, I am afraid that I will die and the Tao will disappear tomorrow. I hope the Immortal Venerable will have mercy and save your subordinate." Immortal Venerable, it's so good to see you again. After so many years, I thought you had already passed away. There was a slight sob in his words, but he did not mention the matter of promotion to heaven. Heavy dark clouds obscured the heavens outside the heavens in the eyes of the beings. The gap between the sky and the earth was reborn. The beings regretted it, and Xuanfa, sitting in the Shantuo Dojo, looked at the constantly emerging scenes and couldn't help but have a headache. In the Xuanwang heaven and earth, all those who prayed in their hearts and mentioned him, Xuanfa, would be perceived by him. Bewildered by the 99 ascension positions, Xuanfa faced as many as tens of millions of inner voices here. Among them, there were indeed some who had some connection with him, and in the past, there were also not a few who belonged to the Wangxian alliance. Even Xuanfa, facing the choice of these 99 seats, was in trouble for a while. Xuanfa didn't think much of the vast majority, and those he favored were mostly unwilling to be confined within the dojo. Xuanfa didn't want to force it either. Hey, the first immortal of Xuanwang, troubles are indispensable. Xuanfa chuckled and mocked himself. As he spoke, his gaze flickered towards a young Taoist attendant standing beside him. This trouble of the great Lord, so many people in the world desire it, yet cannot obtain it, the Taoist attendant immediately responded. Xuanfa did not reply. This Taoist attendant was precisely the one bestowed by the Xuanwang saint. That single finger, besides this Taoist attendant, also implanted a large amount of knowledge and insights about possibilities, upper mountain, and the infinite sea into Xuanfa's mind. At the same time, Xuanfa also saw a scene. It was the scene of his grand ancestor being expelled from the Xuanwang immortal realm by the Xuanwang saint. It seems to be a warning from the saint, to prevent me from thinking of finding a backer. Xuanfa shook his head slightly. Since he had chosen the path of surrendering to cultivation and becoming the essence of the Xuanwang immortal realm's heaven and earth, it was impossible for him to betray it. Great Lord, rest assured. What you desire, the matter of the Zhontian king's message in the past, may not be impossible to achieve. Just take another step forward, and it will be possible. The Taoist attendant beside him seemed to have the ability to kuitan peek into his heart. One sentence revealed what Xuanfa was thinking. Initially, Xuanfa was a little surprised, but then he thought that this Taoist attendant was bestowed by the saint, so he no longer found it strange. In fact, in addition to having the ability to understand thoughts, the Taoist attendant also knew many things outside the Xuanwang immortal realm, outside of the open black lens bracket primordial close black lens bracket possibilities. Xuanfa had questions, and the Taoist attendant would often answer them when asked. However, the Taoist attendant remained tight-lipped about anything related to the mysterious Xuanwang saint. On Yi 6 Yi 9 Yi Book Yi Bar Yi Si No Yi Wrong version. After some communication, Xuanfa had become accustomed to it. Another step forward, that would be to solidify the principles of heaven and earth, to prove longevity, Xuanfa nodded and said softly. With the great lord's current strength, connecting to the mountains and seas, although you can leave the Xuanwang immortal realm on your own, your power and might are no different from the true immortals of the past immortal realm. But wanting to cross over to other possibilities is beyond your capabilities. Unless you become a part of the Xuanwang immortal realm, the principles of heaven and earth. With your body as one with the immortal realm, using your body as a boat, you can cross the mountains and seas. The Taoist attendant seemed to know everything in the Xuanwang world, explaining it in detail. Xuanfa nodded slightly upon hearing this. Although he was the #1 immortal in Xuanwang, his understanding of this world was not as good as the Taoist attendant in front of him. Therefore, he patiently listened to his explanation. I understand the principle, but wanting to take this step is difficult. Even though he had already pointed out the ultimate path for all living beings, standing at the forefront of the existing path, Xuanfa found that the road ahead seemed to be blocked by an endless abyss. No matter what, he could not take the next step. The great Tao of the Xuanwang immortal realm is naturally mixed and without flaws. To solidify it, you must either find its weak points or have something that can surpass it. After thinking for 3 days and 3 nights, Xuanfa still had no clue. I just broke through, so I can't be too hasty. It is too difficult to find answers within the Xuanwang immortal realm. Perhaps I should look beyond Xuanwang, Xuanfa muttered in his heart, gazing into the distance. With his current strength, standing at the pinnacle of the Xuanwang immortal realm, his vision was enough to cross the high wall and look at the starry sky outside the Xuanwang immortal realm. Ripples rippled, and light and shadows flickered. It seemed to be in intense turmoil. Just as Xuanfa had the idea of exploring, outside the Shantuo dojo, the 4 heavenly gates that had not been calm for long actually shone with brilliant white light again. It turned out that another immortal who had merged with the Tao had appeared. Xuanfa did not expect the second immortal of Xuanwang to come so quickly. He could not help but look curiously. It turns out to be Su Bai, the first person on the function list. With a glance, Xuanfa immediately understood. He had long known how strong this person's talent was. He was already not far from merging with the Tao. Now that the path had been pointed out by himself, it was reasonable for him to realize and improve between morning and evening. It's just a pity that if there were no saint above, his limit would not have been limited to this. After being silent for a moment, Xuanfa thought in his heart again, me too. Before Xuanfa could think too much, Su Bai had already completed his promotion. Another dojo was generated out of thin air in the outer heavens. Its name is Open Black Lens Bracket Rendu Dojo Close Black Lens Bracket. Xuanfa was thinking about whether to say hello to this new colleague. But Su Bai had already rushed over, uninvited. Xuanfa was stunned, but he heard Su Bai say in a deep voice, fellow Taoist must know about the Xuanwang reincarnation world-destroying tribulation. Is there any way to avoid the suffering of all living beings from this tribulation? Xuanwang reincarnation world-destroying tribulation. Xuanfa was slightly startled. After a moment, he reacted. This is set by the saint, although it destroys all living beings, it benefits Xuanwang. How can it be avoided? Xuanfa shook his head. He didn't care much about the life and death of all living beings in the world. With the greatness of Xuanwang, it still needs to destroy all living beings to benefit it. Isn't this a flaw? If there is a method that does not destroy all living beings, but still benefits Xuanwang, isn't that the method to solidify the principles of heaven and earth? Su Bai asked, looking at Xuanfa word by word, his eyes shining. Xuanfa narrowed his eyes, carefully pondering, but still somewhat uncertain in his heart. He secretly glanced at the Taoist attendant beside him and understood after seeing his expression. Fellow Taoist is indeed extremely intelligent. This is exactly a method to solidify the principles of heaven and earth. If it can be done, proving the Tao and achieving longevity and freedom from external things will be just around the corner. Xuanfa couldn't help but praise. But Su Bai shook his head. Longevity and freedom are not what I care about. I only wish to save all living beings from the suffering of reincarnation. Xuanfa was immediately speechless. Although the other party's ideas were different from his own, there was no need to refute them. After pondering for a moment, he asked, although you and I have proven to be true immortals, compared to the Xuanwang immortal realm, we are like a drop in the ocean. If you want to seek a method that benefits heaven and earth, I am afraid that our strength is not enough and we must seek beyond the high wall. I came here precisely to invite fellow Taoists to join me. Su Bai bowed. Xuanfa smiled. That's what I want. Just as Su Bai and Xuanfa reached an alliance and planned to go beyond the high wall together to seek opportunities. Xuanwang's Saint Li Fan was confronting a figure. Evil was monstrous, and his eyes revealed fierceness. It was the evil Su Bai that Li Fan had once contacted in Su Bai's eternal dying thoughts. The moment Su Bai merged with the Tao and ascended to immortality, this one sensed his existence and arrived in an instant. He wanted to capture and refine this self of possibility. Fortunately, Li Fan was prepared and blocked it in time. Hand it over, and I will spare you from death, evil Su Bai said coldly. Seeing that the other party did not directly attack, but threatened with words first, Li Fan knew that his deterrence had taken effect. Senior, what do you think of my Xuanwang immortal realm? Li Fan did not directly respond to the other party, but changed the subject and asked. Evil Su Bai was actually led by the nose, and his gaze looked at the world in front of him. A bit of solemnity gradually appeared in his eyes. 1594. The saint replenishes the void realm. What evil Su Bai looked at first were the 4 heavenly pillars hidden within the Xuanwang world. Primal beginning, hunger, grand simplicity, and engraving. Although the Xuanwang immortal world, after being nurtured and transformed by the longevity great Tao, no longer needed these 4 heavenly pillars to resist Tao annihilation, these 4 pillars still stood as symbolic markers between heaven and earth. Evil Su Bai's gaze quickly swept past primal beginning and engraving, pausing slightly on the grand simplicity heavenly pillar, but lingering the longest on the hunger character pillar. Li Fan keenly noticed this rather peculiar detail. He then quickly recalled the scene he had once seen in Su Bai's eternal remnant will. In order to prove the strength of his power to Su Bai, evil Su Bai had controlled Su Bai's body and personally visited the immortal ruins, then kicked the Tao comprehending hunger immortal to the ground, wantonly trampling on the hunger immortal's face. Even subjected to such treatment, the hunger immortal, who was in the midst of Tao comprehension, did not notice anything, demonstrating the enormous gap between the strengths of the two sides. But now that I think about it, evil Su Bai has 100 ways to prove his strength. This seems more like an insult. Could it be that evil Su Bai and the hunger immortal have some kind of feud? Of course, the hunger immortal that Li Fan thought evil Su Bai had a feud with was not the one who had already transformed into a heavenly pillar in the primal beginning, but rather some other, perhaps even more powerful, possibility. So powerful that evil Su Bai was repeatedly thwarted, and then felt resentment, so that when he saw a weaker parallel self, he couldn't help but take action to vent his anger. Looking at his expression, the possibility seems extremely high. Evil Su Bai was not a person who hid his emotions, and Li Fan secretly observed the changes in his expression, and had already made a plan in his heart. However, he did not mention this topic for the time being. In the past, I was fortunate enough to receive guidance from Senior Shukyu, and obtained the creation of eternity and grand simplicity in this rotten K-Dao field, which is why I was able to build this world as a ship for crossing in the future. Now that the Ark of Salvation is complete, the mountains and seas are, after all, terrifying. I am still quite uneasy about whether this ark can protect me completely. Therefore, I would like to invite Senior to observe it and give me some guidance. Li Fan said slowly. Boy, you have quite a thick face. Why should I guide you for no reason? Unexpectedly, evil Su Bai didn't pay any attention to Li Fan, but suddenly changed his face. He reached out and grabbed towards the outer heavens, where Su Bai was. He wanted to directly take away this possibility of himself. However, something that evil Su Bai didn't expect happened. Although Su Bai was completely unaware of his attack, and seemed to have no ability to resist at all, a layer of black edges instantly appeared around his body. This black edge was composed of countless constantly jumping black dots, and it was unknown what it was. It was able to dissolve his power in an instant. Evil Su Bai, who hadn't been particularly serious at first, was slightly stunned, and then carefully looked at Li Fan in front of him again. This place is my Ark of Salvation. Everything in this place belongs to me. To take without asking is called stealing. I thought you were a senior expert, but I didn't expect. But you are a chicken thief. After stopping Evil Su-bai, Li Fan also looked gloomy and said sharply. Evil Su-bai smiled playfully when he heard this. Boy, don't think that I will care about being labeled with a bad name. You don't know that the things I, Su-bai, have done are praised even by chicken thieves. Before he finished speaking, he had already made another move. Without warning, the sky of the Xuanwang Immortal world became gloomy. A huge black vortex quickly formed in the sky. The vortex was like a pitch-black abyss, slowly rotating and devouring and absorbing everything around it. The Xuanwang world trembled slightly. The cornerstone of the law that stabilized the world rapidly flowed towards the abyss. Didn't you want me to give you some guidance? Okay. Compared to the storms in the mountains and seas, this vortex is not worth mentioning. If your boat can't even withstand the erosion of this vortex, then you might as well not think about stepping into the mountains and seas. Just stay here for the rest of your life. Evil Su-bai said with a smile. In his palm, a black vortex also emerged. The cornerstone of the laws of heaven and earth absorbed by the vortex in the Xuanwang sky were all present in his palm. As the parents of Xuanwang, Li Fan clearly felt the terrifying destructive power of this black vortex on the Xuanwang Immortal world, even far exceeding the destructive power expected when it officially collided with the mountains and seas. Obviously, Evil Su-bai was lying. He even deliberately took the opportunity to dodge Li Fan's confidence. Although this vortex was not as powerful as his full blow, it was definitely not comparable to the normal level of transcendence. If Li Fan hadn't already entered the mountains and seas, he would have been deceived by him. It really doesn't have the demeanor of a senior expert. However, Evil Su-bai's actions were also within Li Fan's expectations. In the memory of Su-bai's eternal remnant will, Li Fan already had a relatively comprehensive understanding of this Evil Su-bai's style of doing things. Therefore, he pretended to be very innocent and asked somewhat inexplicably, "Vortex? Where is there any vortex? Senior, please make your move. Although my boat is broken, it should be able to withstand some wind and waves." Evil Su-bai didn't understand the meaning of Li Fan's words at first, but soon, when he noticed that the originally raging black vortex in the sky had disappeared silently and unknowingly, and the wound caused by the vortex was restored to its original state in an instant. It was as if everything was just an illusion. This time, Evil Su-bai was really shocked. This kind of recovery ability, even if Shukyu separates his longevity, it wouldn't be. When Evil Su-bai looked at Li Fan again, his eyes suddenly narrowed. His gaze fell on an orange cat that had appeared on Li Fan's shoulder at some point. The orange cat was lazy and sleeping soundly. It looked familiar. After a moment, Evil Su-bai reacted and couldn't help but narrow his eyes. Please, you, collect _6_9_book_bar, 69 book bar. So that's how it is. There is also that one's method. This kid, in the end. Evil Su-bai became more and more surprised and uncertain in his heart. Before leaving the mountains and seas, so many people have secretly come forward to support him. Although Evil Su-bai seemed crazy, he was not stupid. Shukyu Gong was famous for protecting his own. Although he was not in the mountains and seas at this moment, there was no need to offend him. Otherwise, according to his temperament, that blow just now would have destroyed everything here and taken the target away. His restraint was precisely because of Shukyu Gong's face. But he didn't expect that the person in front of him, in addition to Shukyu, also had the Taiwei Holy Emperor as his backer. Although on the surface, they are at odds with each other, they have a common understanding of saving the mountains and seas. It is not impossible for them to cooperate secretly. Thinking of an anecdote from a long time ago, Evil Su-bai couldn't help but think like this. That was when the ancient and modern other shore had not yet been connected. Countless strong people in the present other shore suddenly felt a sense of sorrow and a feeling that a great disaster was imminent. Everyone gathered together and deduced, and came to a conclusion. It was that the time node existing in the upper reaches of the river of time had fallen into a precarious situation and could be destroyed by Tao annihilation at any time. At that time, although there were already 2 saints who had successfully crossed the desolate void of the barrier, it was clear that relying solely on the help of these 2 saints was not enough to resolve the upstream crisis. But for a time, the other shore could not find a second person who was confident in crossing the desolate void. Just when everyone was helpless, Shukyu Gong took the initiative to find the Taiwei Holy Emperor and persuaded him to send 2 doses of open black lens bracket holy luck close black lens bracket medicine. The holy luck medicine was transformed by the condensation of luck from the holy dynasty. With the vast scale of the Taiwei holy dynasty spanning the mountains and seas and occupying countless possibilities, it had only condensed a little over 3 doses over the years. Sending out one would greatly damage the vitality of the holy dynasty and even the holy emperor. However, this time, the holy emperor directly sent out 2 holy luck medicines at once. He shaped the third saint, who successfully crossed the void in time and resolved the crisis of Tao annihilation. This led to the great event of the desolate void being repaired and the severed ancient and modern times being restored to connection. With the connection between ancient and modern times, everyone's strength has greatly increased. The Holy Emperor has not only fully recovered from his injuries, but has also faintly taken a step further. It can be seen that whether it is for survival or for profit, they have the possibility of cooperating again. Especially since the entry and exit of the desolate void seems to be becoming more and more frequent recently. Could it be that there is a trend of connecting upwards again? Evil Subai had countless thoughts in his mind at this moment. You are very good. In the end, he uttered these few words coldly, saying to Li Fan. 1595. Words are spoken and laws are followed. To possess such strength before even entering the mountains and seas. Given time, once you officially begin your trials within the mountains and seas, your future is indeed promising. However, Xie Subai's tone shifted, his voice growing cold. The help of others can serve as a boat or an oar. But if you truly wish to transcend, you must ultimately rely on yourself. Do you have something that is uniquely your own? The icy whisper echoed in Li Fan's ears, like a demonic incantation. In Xie Subai's eyes, a strange glint also appeared. Li Fan's mind was involuntarily drawn to it. Their eyes met, and in a moment of trance, Li Fan suddenly found himself in an unfamiliar space-time. The surrounding space was entirely empty. Only Li Fan and Xie Subai stood facing each other. When all that external support is gone, how will you fight? Subai's bewitching voice echoed around him. It turned out that even though he had seen the many profound inheritances within the Xuanwang immortal realm, he was unwilling to lose face in front of Li Fan. Fighting in the Xuanwang immortal realm would inevitably cause damage. So he simply pulled Li Fan into this mental space to confront him. Boy, watch closely. Here, I won't hold back. Before his words faded, the figure of Subai in front of him split into 2, then 4, then 8. In an instant, nearly infinite phantoms manifested, filling the empty void. Each Subai's expression was different. Some were filled with compassion, some wore gentle smiles, and others had calm eyes. Around them, many scenes from different possibilities manifested. In some, the immortal realm still existed, and Subai was an immortal official of the immortal domain. In others, Subai was still just immortal, but one who held the well-being of all beings in his heart, revered by the people. But all these manifested Subai were undoubtedly kind-hearted. Only Xie Subai, in his black robes, stood out amidst the countless phantoms. Like the moon surrounded by stars, he stood proudly in the center. The different possible scenes manifested around the countless Subai gradually converged and connected under the will of the central Xie Subai. Like hundreds of rivers flowing into the sea, like earth and stone piling up to form a mountain. In just a moment, Li Fan felt as if he was surrounded by mountains and seas. The power of mountains, the might of the sea. It was almost indistinguishable from the boundless sea and the upper mountain that Li Fan had personally seen. Or rather, it is almost indistinguishable from the mountain and sea Jingshang that I can see, rather than the real mountains and seas. If he could devour all the versions of himself from all possibilities, reaching the state where all selves become one, then perhaps even the word, almost, would have to be removed. To manifest the image of the mountains and seas with the power of one person. Is this the true state of transcendence? With the mountains and seas before him, Li Fan's heart remained incredibly calm. Although Xie Subai's display was grand, he was not afraid at all. Firstly, because this was only within the mental space. The clash of wills between the two sides would not truly affect reality, regardless of victory, defeat, life, or death. His act of making a great show of force had at least had some deterrent effect. Secondly, Li Fan had already clashed with Xie Subai before. Although the process was somewhat convoluted, the final result was that he instantly killed Xie Subai. It was precisely within the eternal legacy left by Subai in the Xuanwang realm. Even if the power of the moves Xie Subai displays here is many levels stronger than what was left in the eternal legacy back then, there is no essential difference in front of me. The sound of mountains roaring and seas surging, like a raging storm, approached inch by inch. It seemed that Xie Subai was deliberately trying to use this slowly increasing pressure to crush Li Fan's will. But Li Fan was fearless, laughing wildly in the wind and rain of the mountains and seas. Has senior heard of open black lens bracket words become law close black lens bracket? This junior is untalented, and most of my strength comes from supernatural powers. His smile vanished, and Li Fan said sternly, word by word, the storm is coming. Then open black lens bracket sparse rain, ceasing wind close black lens bracket. His voice was clear and spread throughout Xie Subai's manifested mountains and seas. As if an invisible hand gently pressed down between the mountains and seas. The original shrill howling sound was instantly suppressed, becoming barely audible. Although there were still some waves in the mountains and seas, they were no longer a cause for concern. Seeing this scene, all the Sabai's faces flashed with uncontrollable astonishment. Before they could react, they heard Li Fan say, although the realm of mountains and seas is beautiful, it is a bit of an eyesore. Please disperse. In the mental space, the continuous mountains and seas fell into a moment of stillness. And then, the mountains collapsed, and the seas dried up. Along with the countless Sabai who had manifested the image of the mountains and seas, they all vanished like smoke. Boom, the mental space shattered instantly, and Li Fan and Xie Subai both returned to reality in an instant. Although Xie Subai's face still looked calm, his heart had already been stirred by a monstrous wave. What was that just now? Please, you. Collect _69 book 1 bar, 69 book bar. My manifested mountains and seas actually dissipated inexplicably without any ability to resist. Even in the mental space, in a clash of wills, Xie Subai was speechless. He had also asked Shukyu and the three sages for guidance and sparring. Even in front of these sages who could cross the eternal silent void, he, Subai, would not be so useless. But the defeat just now is a fact. Doesn't that mean that the upper limit of achievement that this kid can theoretically reach is even above Shukyu and the three sages? Open black lens bracket words become law close black lens bracket. Such a supernatural power actually exists between the mountains and seas. It can even affect the mountains and seas. This, Xie Subai was shocked by his own thoughts. Although it was a bit bizarre, after thinking about it carefully, everything he had seen in this so-called Xuanwang immortal realm had a reasonable explanation. No wonder those old things are so generous. Xie Subai suddenly understood. While Xie Subai's heart was shaken, Li Fan's heart was also quite heavy. The gap between his strength and mine is still a bit too large. Jen is still asleep, and even in the mental space, I used open black lens bracket truth and falsehood close black lens bracket in 2 steps to eliminate it. Li Fan naturally did not know any words become law, supernatural powers. The method he used to defeat Xie Subai was exactly the same as in the Eternal Legacy. It was precisely the change of open black lens bracket truth and falsehood close black lens bracket. Through Subai's Eternal Legacy, his understanding of Xie Subai, and the slight fluctuations of truth and falsehood that were initially released in the mental space, Li Fan determined that Xie Subai did not know of the existence of open black lens bracket truth and falsehood close black lens bracket. For things outside of his cognition, even if Li Fan used it in front of Xie Subai, he naturally would not be able to distinguish what kind of supernatural power it was. And that ability to instantly dissipate the manifested image of the mountains and seas in a breath was indeed in line with the words open black lens bracket words become law close black lens bracket. One is that it is within the Xuanwang immortal realm. The other is that I already have a relatively sufficient understanding of Xie Subai. That's why I dared to use the change of truth and falsehood. In front of other transcendent powerhouses, I can't be so rash. The two men had different thoughts and were in a stalemate for a moment. In the end, it was Subai who broke the situation with a cold, evil smile. Not bad. You can be considered to have barely passed the test. You can be considered qualified to officially step into the mountains and seas. In that case, I will leave this body here with you for now. I will come to retrieve it when we officially meet in the mountains and seas in the future. Xie Subai said, looking at Xuanwang Subai, who was staying with Xuanfa and inexplicably feeling uneasy. With that, his figure slowly faded, as if he was about to leave. Senior, please wait, Li Fan called out to him. Xie Subai looked at Li Fan, his expression indifferent. Senior, please accept this thing. As Li Fan spoke, he reached out and grabbed the celestial pillar transformed from the hungry immortal, and handed it over. Xie Subai was slightly stunned. 1596. Time-destroying 100 refining machine. Evil Subai narrowed his eyes, examining the object in his hand. Light and shadow twisted and changed for a while, the towering image of the celestial pillar gradually dissipated, revealing the starving immortal sleeping quietly inside. Evil Subai looked at him, his expression somewhat subtle. "It seems you're quite sensible, kid." Without rejecting Li Fan's suggestion, Evil Subai was silent for a moment, then said indifferently. His figure faded, gradually disappearing. In the blink of an eye, he had already left the primordial possibility. Just like when he came, silently. Li Fan stared at the sky for a long time, before finally confirming that the other party had really left. He couldn't help but breathe a slight sigh of relief. Even with the backing of the Xuanwang Immortal Realm, with his current strength, confronting a detached powerhouse like Evil Subai head-on would still put him under considerable pressure. Especially after losing Huan Zhen, his greatest life-saving measure. Fortunately, the result is not bad. As his spirit relaxed slightly, the countless Dao One insects hidden within the Xuanwang heaven and earth, ready for battle, returned to their original state from being ready to erupt at any moment. They continued to regather near the 4 celestial platforms, increasing their adaptability to the mountains and seas. Because of the early contact with Subai's eternal relic, Evil Subai could be said to be the most suitable detached powerhouse in the mountains and seas to be the first to truly come into contact with. Although he was filled with evil aura, he was not crazy and senseless. Therefore, he could be deterred and restrained by the great Tao of longevity, the Taiwei holy medicine, and many other manifestations of power. And even if Li Fan's plan failed, and he inevitably had to fight Evil Subai head-on. In the Xuanwang Immortal Realm's home field, with the newly born Mo Sha, Dao One insect, and the changes between truth and falsehood as trump cards, Li Fan was also confident in fighting Evil Subai. It was just that the final result might be more tragic. But survival should be no problem. This was also the reason why Li Fan seemed to be taking a risky move. The risk was extremely high, and the reward was naturally considerable. Most importantly, Li Fan had a clear understanding of his current strength. As the saying goes, if you don't climb a high mountain, you won't know the height of the sky, if you don't approach a deep stream, you won't know the thickness of the earth. Li Fan had visited the mountains and seas several times in the past, but he had only sneaked in and glanced lightly, rather than formally crossing them. He didn't have a particularly quantified and clear understanding of the enormous pressure faced when crossing the mountains and seas. Without Huan Zhen's means of being able to start over at any time, the Xuanwang Immortal Realm's act of colliding with the mountains and seas would not have a chance for trial and error. A slight mistake would turn the Xuanwang Immortal Realm into dust, and Li Fan would be seriously injured even if he didn't die. Using Evil Subai as an anchor, I can see the mountains and seas and measure myself. Even though the Xuanwang Immortal Realm already has many foundations, it is still not qualified enough to safely cross the mountains and seas as an immortal boat. Seemingly sensing Li Fan's thoughts, the Dao One insect's erosion and learning became even more active. Relying solely on the evolution brought about by the Dao One insect is too slow. The main problem with the Xuanwang Immortal boat now is that the hull is not strong enough. Even though I use rare and hard materials to build the immortal boat, they are not completely fused together. It's as if they are roughly piled together, and there are still many gaps between them. Under normal circumstances, it's fine. I can't even observe these emptiness. But once faced with the pressure of colliding with the mountains and seas, these gaps will be the culprit for the immortal boat's disintegration in an instant. There are 2 ways to solve this problem. First, find more materials to fill all the gaps. Second, is to reforge the Xuanwang heaven and earth. Each cycle of the tribulation of destruction is a refactoring. With Li Fan's current vision, as long as he finds the crux of the problem, he can quickly think of a solution. Although his realm is imprisoned before the detachment realm, his insights have already far exceeded his own strength. In a sense, Li Fan is like the legendary great power reincarnating with memories to cultivate again. But in fact, his advanced knowledge comes from the accumulation of constant reincarnation. I want to take a 2-pronged approach. There are still true immortals in the Supreme Tao Book, and they must all be captured and transformed into materials to fill the Xuanwang Immortal Realm. I myself must further understand the principles of elixirs and refine Xuanwang further. The orange cat sleeping on Li Fan's shoulder shattered instantly, transforming back into a loquat with white front added. Using Tao to transform medicine, using medicine to metaphor Tao. Eliminating the refining step is truly wonderful. How exactly did the Holy Emperor do it? Although Li Fan had absorbed the loquat holy medicine, he still only had a vague understanding of the reason why the holy medicine could take shape. He immediately began to study it carefully. If I can imitate the Holy Emperor, the Xuanwang immortal realm may usher in another qualitative change. Li Fan's eyes flickered. Theoretically speaking, the way of detachment in the mountains and seas is to walk out of one's own path. Li Fan's method of using the Xuanwang immortal realm as a ferry boat can also be regarded as a unique method of detachment. And it can gather the strengths of many schools. It's just that, it seems that there are few detachments in the mountains and seas like me. I don't know if there are any disadvantages to this. Such a thought flashed through Li Fan's mind. Although he vaguely had this premonition in his heart, he didn't care much about it. After all, Huan Zhen was only in a deep sleep, not completely disappeared. First walk out of the mountains and seas to see its wonders. If the disadvantages are really too great, then I'll just endure until Huan Zhen wakes up and start all over. Li Fan looked at the Xuanwang immortal realm in front of him, his thoughts surging. After a long time, he suppressed his trivial thoughts and looked outside the high wall. The house has been barely cleaned, and I can barely invite you in. The recent happenings in the Shuo Star Sea near the high wall instantly entered his eyes. The holy merchant lord, who had fallen into a state of madness because the merchant immortal boat was destroyed, was already very weak under the siege of the immortals in the Shuo Star Sea. But he didn't know what treasures he had on him, which had always been hanging on to his last breath. The holy merchant lord was able to keep his divine soul from dissipating, and from time to time, he would turn around and bite the immortals in the Shuo Star Sea. It was indeed difficult to kill true immortals with reckless attacks without reason. But it could achieve a large number of serious injuries. An undying nameless true immortal is indeed a bit difficult to deal with. If he can't be suppressed and sealed, he can almost only be avoided. But unfortunately, the foundation of the Shuo Star Sea is there, surrounded by annihilation lands. Li Fan quite admired the holy merchant lord. But what he was more interested in was the other party's life-saving method. Li Fan had seen more than once that the holy merchant lord had survived the chaos's full blow without dying. Li Fan was very clear about chaos's strength. The nameless realm, with immortal power lingering, could almost transform everything in the world into the primordial state of chaos. The killing power was close to Tao annihilation. But after the holy merchant lord was eroded by chaos's immortal power, several rays of light flashed on his body, and in a moment, he expelled chaos's immortal power. Not only chaos's immortal power. The attacks of other nameless true immortals in the Shuo Star Sea were also like this, easily resolved by the constantly flashing light on the holy merchant lord. Besides the true immortals I was familiar with from my previous life, such as Chaos and Shanhua, there was one who particularly caught Li Fan's attention. Although his name was still within the Book of Supreme Tao, it was almost blurred and invisible, as if about to disappear at any moment. The Tao path corresponding to him was the character cone. However, his method of dealing with enemies was not to manifest cone-like objects to injure them, but to take the meaning of no place to stand. The mad and erratic Lord of Holy Commerce remained near the Sea of Shuo precisely because of the limitations imposed by this cone immortal. The range he could move within seemed to be confined to that small area. No matter what, he couldn't escape. Even with life-saving, unfathomable means, he would be besieged and exhausted to death by the immortals of the Sea of Shuo. After all, the Lord of Holy Commerce was not a true immortal, without the blessing of the infinite sea's boundless power. Moreover, the shimmering light on his body, used to dissolve and expel the immortal power of other true immortals, seemed to be growing weaker and weaker. The Lord of Holy Commerce's life-saving methods should be related to the Holy Commerce pioneers who went to explore other possibilities. Possessing information about other possibilities in the mountains and seas, this Lord of Holy Commerce must not fall into the hands of others. Li Fan's heart stirred, and the hidden wisp of consciousness he had left in the Sea of Shuo began to rapidly approach the Lord of Holy Commerce. The other true immortals were not worth worrying about. As long as Li Fan manifested his full power, using the might of the Xuanwang immortal realm, he could suppress them all in an instant. But the Cone immortal, whom he had newly encountered and whose name was about to disappear from the Book of Supreme Tao, made Li Fan feel a sense of vigilance. Please, you, bookmark _69 bookbar, 6 int bookbar. This Cone immortal should be quite powerful. At the time node 10,000 years later in my previous life, I did not see this person in the Sea of Shuo. I hadn't even heard of him. The possibility of him falling is small, but Li Fan carefully sensed the aura of the Cone Great Tao that was sealing off the Lord of Holy Commerce, and his brow furrowed, with strength that hasn't yet reached transcendence. It should be that, with the help of the Ark of Salvation or similar means, he escaped to other possibilities. As for why no one remembers him, the reason is the same as why his name is about to disappear from the Book of Supreme Tao. No place to stand applies not only to others, but also to himself. This is a rather extreme Tao path. Intolerant of heaven and earth, therefore supremely invincible. Although this Tao was strange and unpredictable, it could not escape Li Fan's discerning eyes. In less than the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, Li Fan had already grasped its mysteries. Even if he hasn't reached the realm of transcendence, the Cone Immortal's strength is truly not weak. Moreover, this Tao is special, and it can be said to be incompatible with other Tao paths. If I integrate it into the Xuanwang Immortal realm, it would be detrimental to stability. Li Fan did not intend to confront him head-on, only wanting to snatch the Lord of Holy Commerce away. But things did not go as he wished. Even with the help of the myriad manifestation Tao network, Li Fan's consciousness could no longer approach after getting within a certain distance of the Lord of Holy Commerce. It was as if the Cone Great Tao had truly isolated the Lord of Holy Commerce from the original possibility. Then I can't be blamed. Although this Tao cannot be integrated into the Xuanwang Immortal realm, it can be forged into a sharp weapon. Above the Xuanwang celestial heavens, a glint of light flashed in Li Fan's true form's eyes. His figure flickered, and the next moment, he had already arrived outside the high wall, within the Sea of Shuo. It wasn't just him alone. As the parent of Xuanwang, wherever Li Fan went, the might of the Xuanwang Immortal realm could follow. Therefore, it was like a dark cloud pressing down. Above the Sea of Shuo, it was as if a million celestial soldiers had gathered. The immortals who were fiercely fighting with the Lord of Holy Commerce couldn't help but stop their movements. Full of suspicion and uncertainty, they all looked up at the sky above. Everyone, have you, felt a strange pressure? This feeling of impending disaster, could it be the advent of Tao annihilation? Fellow Taoists, be careful. The immortals all changed color. Just as they were stunned, a huge palm suddenly condensed in the void, pressing down horizontally towards the immortals. Wherever the giant palm passed, traces of cracks appeared. Countless black chi, as if finding a breakthrough, frantically surged from within. It was clear that the might accompanying this palm directly broke through the limit that the lower realm star sea could withstand, attracting the tribulation of Tao annihilation to pursue. After the black chi descended, for some reason, it did not launch an attack on the giant palm. Instead, it swept towards the immortals of the Sea of Shuo at the first moment. Therefore, it looked as if the giant palm was carrying endless Tao annihilation black chi, pressing down directly on the immortals. If it were just a separate giant palm, perhaps the group of true immortals would have resisted together. But with the prelude to Tao annihilation, the rolling black chi representing the tribulation of world destruction was present. The true immortals below, and even the nameless true immortals, all scattered in panic like ants. They had no intention of resisting at all. Thus, the assembled immortals were scattered by Li Fan with a single palm. Only the Cone Great Tao, which was trapping the Lord of Holy Commerce, seemed to be holding firm, not dissipating. But in front of the radiant giant palm, standing firm only lasted for 3 breaths before it was broken through. But to Li Fan's surprise, although the blockade was broken, the Cone Great Tao itself did not dissipate. Instead, it was like a sharp cone, deeply piercing into Li Fan's giant palm. Or rather, into the Xuanwang Immortal realm. Sensing the intrusion of a foreign object, Mo Sha arrived in an instant, wanting to corrode and transform it. The Cone Great Tao was still within the mountains and seas. Naturally, it could not escape Mo Sha's corrosion. However, Mo Sha's absorption speed was unprecedentedly slow. It was like a stinky and hard rock, although it could be gnawed, it would cost a few teeth. This Great Tao is truly interesting. Li Fan was not angry but happy. He thought that he had fully recognized all the true immortals in the primordial beginning. He did not expect to see a surprise today. Under the urging of his will, Mo Sha further increased the intensity of the corrosion. And the Tao One insect also took the opportunity to divide, one part learning and evolving Mo Sha again, and the other part jointly corroding this Cone Great Tao that had pierced into the heavens and earth. Li Fan also took this opportunity to gain a further understanding of this Cone Great Tao. This immortal had almost brought the artistic conception of no place to stand to the extreme, completely isolating himself from the outside world. Clearly, there was a close connection between the individual and the primordial possibility they were in. But on this Cone Immortal, it was as if there were different possibilities separated, like an unfathomable chasm. No wonder it's so hard to gnaw on. Wanting to touch him is almost equivalent to making a crossing. Through the absorption and transformation of the Tao One insect and Mo Sha, the gap created by the cone Great Tao was rapidly shrinking. Li Fan also vaguely saw the cone Immortal clearly. A small, thin figure, standing alone, looked like a 5 or 6-year-old child. Silently watching Li Fan from afar. The closer he got, the more Li Fan felt the other party's rejection. 1597. Zhansheng will never leave. It's not directed at me, but rather a rejection of the mortal world and everything within the mountains and seas. If the great Tao of this cone is developed to its extreme, it might be able to carve out a place belonging to itself from the mountains and seas. But that's only in theory. To reach such a realm, one needs years of unremitting effort, never slacking off for a moment. Even the slightest negligence could render tens of thousands of years of arduous cultivation futile. It's not a path of cultivation for ordinary people. As the encroachment of Inkkill progressed, Li Fan's understanding of the great Tao of the cone deepened, and he couldn't help but shake his head slightly. At the same time, he was getting closer and closer to that solitary figure. However, the figure on the opposite side didn't panic. Instead, it bowed deeply towards Li Fan from afar. Li Fan was slightly taken aback, but after a moment, he suddenly realized that the distance between himself and the other party had inexplicably increased again. The distant, isolated figure, which he could almost make out clearly, became blurred again. Li Fan stood there, carefully pondering the situation. Through the feedback from Tao One insect and Inkkill, he understood the reason for this phenomenon. It was precisely, I respect others an inch, and they must respect me a foot. Li Fan suddenly realized, this is another kind of Tao path. It is because of this divine power that he was able to cultivate the great Tao of the cone so smoothly to his current level. If he had only cultivated alone, I'm afraid he wouldn't even be able to reach the nameless realm by now. The cone Immortal's divine power of I respect others an inch, and they must respect me a foot was unleashed in an instant. Even Tao One insect and Inkkill didn't sense its Tao fluctuations. However, Li Fan didn't care. As long as he continued to approach the other party, the cone Immortal would have to use it again to protect himself. Sure enough, when the distance between Li Fan and the cone Immortal became close again, that solitary figure bowed and saluted once more. The illusion flashed before his eyes, as if it were an illusion. Li Fan only felt that the other party, in a constant flicker, instantly escaped from the reachable distance to the horizon. It was as if an extremely socially awkward person, seeing a stranger approaching, instantly fled in panic. Li Fan almost laughed out of anger. And in this brief exchange, the cone Immortal also fully understood Li Fan's incredible, learning, ability. Therefore, he wisely gave up the act of trying to seize the Lord of Holy Commerce from him. He bowed 3 times in a row, completely disappearing from Li Fan's sight. Only the Lord of Holy Commerce, who had lost his mind, was left standing in place. The great Tao of the cone, cooperating with that divine power. The speed of escape is indeed a bit too fast. Moreover, the escape relies not only on pure speed, but also on the pressure of my pursuit. In other words, the stronger I am, the greater the pressure I bring, the faster he can escape me. It's like a spring. Currently, there is no particularly effective way to deal with him. Looking at the direction in which the cone Immortal escaped, Li Fan didn't continue to pursue, but temporarily let him go. As long as the cone Immortal doesn't leave primordial origin, with the Supreme Tao book in hand, Li Fan can always lock onto the other party's location from afar. If I want to capture him, I need to think of a special method. For example, a Tao annihilation forbidden land with no way to retreat. Li Fan's eyes flashed, and he withdrew his gaze. He looked towards his goal for this trip. As expected, the Lord of Holy Commerce was completely abnormal. Even though the cone Immortal who had been restricting him had already left, he was still staying within the originally designated area. He waved his hands randomly at the void, squandering the last of his remaining power. Come over here. Grabbing towards the Lord of Holy Commerce in the air, Li Fan wanted to take the opportunity to suppress the other party in the Xuanwang Immortal realm. Unsurprisingly, although the Lord of Holy Commerce was almost exhausted, the protective measures on his body still existed. With a flash of white light, Li Fan only felt that all the Tao net power he tried to use to approach the other party was invisibly dispelled. He grabbed at empty air. It's not that it truly disappeared. But, any part of the myriad manifestations Tao net, like a tentacle, is an extension of Li Fan's power. He could faintly feel that this part of himself still existed at this moment. It's just that it was no longer within the Shuo Star Sea. Not even within primordial origin. But rather, it was actually transferred to another possibility. Li Fan tried to sense the specific situation on the distant other side through the disappearing myriad manifestations Dao-net power. But the distance from primordial origin was too great. With all his strength, he could only sense some blurred images. Beneath a gloomy sky, disorderly items piled up to form mountains. The whole world was like an endless landfill, with no end in sight. After a part of the myriad manifestations Dao-net went there, it lost the support of Li Fan's main body, and it was difficult for it to even stay in the air. It fell straight to the ground, becoming a member of the endless garbage mountains. Instinctively, the ink kill in the myriad manifestations Dao-net began to devour everything around it. Although what seemed to be gathered in this world were all useless garbage, the composition of this garbage was surprisingly refined. Not only was it extremely easy for Inkkill to devour it, but even the degree of enhancement to itself after devouring it was far greater than it was on the primordial origin side. The connection with the garbage mountain world was intermittent, but it was basically certain that the myriad manifestations Dao-net power that he transferred was living very well there. Li Fan simply let that part of the power develop slowly on its own. I just don't know if the Holy Merchant Lord's protection will always transfer to the same destination each time. Thinking this way, Inkkill, at Li Fan's instruction, swarmed towards the Lord of Holy Commerce again. This time, it was still silently resolved, not existing within the primordial origin possibility. But it didn't go to the garbage mountain world, but to other, more distant possibilities. So far away that even Li Fan lost his sense of that part of the Dao-net. Although in theory they still existed, they had already exceeded the scope of Li Fan's control, which was no different from losing them. Moreover, Li Fan was quite wary of this kind of uncontrolled situation. After pondering for a moment, he gave up the act of continuing to test with the myriad manifestations Dao-net. He simply used the other Dao principles he mastered to carry out continuous, saturated strikes. Layers of immortal formations replaced the blockade of the great Dao of the cone. Endless sword light lit up from the formations, annihilating the last bit of the Lord of Holy Commerce's power. The demonic sound echoed, and a huge, illusory pill furnace slowly took shape, covering the Lord of Holy Commerce within it. At this moment, the Lord of Holy Commerce was like a sandbag, enduring Li Fan's storm-like, wanton attacks. The protective measures on his body that transferred attacks had an upper limit that could be endured. The siege of the Shuo Star Sea Immortals had already consumed 77-88 of it. After Li Fan's continuous saturated attacks, it finally reached its limit. Like a star exploding, turning into specks of white light, finally dissipated. Without this protective measure, the Lord of Holy Commerce was no different from a mortal in front of Li Fan. In an instant, he was suppressed and imprisoned in the Xuanwang Immortal realm. Li Fan nodded with satisfaction and looked around. The Shuo Star Sea Immortals had long since scattered like birds and beasts. A few nameless true immortals, who had previously held on to some lingering hope regarding the Holy Merchant Lord, completely abandoned their thoughts after witnessing Li Fan's thunderous methods of first dispelling the cone immortal and then breaking through defenses. They fled in panic. Escape? Where can they escape to? Li Fan chuckled. However, he did not pursue them, even though he had already grasped all the escape routes of the immortals. Li Fan intended to leave these people to the soon-to-emerge Dao harmonization true immortals of the Xuanwang Immortal realm, for them to use as training. The Shuo Star Sea was just an appetizer before the real battle. The Guangwu Star Sea, further away, was Li Fan's true target. With a thought, Li Fan had already returned to the Xuanwang Immortal realm. Please, you, bookmark 6, books, bar. In the heavens, he began to try to invade the Holy Merchant Lord's thoughts. And beside him, the orange cat Pai Pa manifested its form. It cried out a few times at the Holy Merchant Lord, issuing merciless mockery. In a short period of time, the two's identities had been exchanged. However, the Holy Merchant Lord no longer even possessed the emotion of grief and indignation. When Li Fan entered his heart, what he saw was the moment when the Merchant Immortal ship was destroyed. Time seemed to be frozen at this moment. The Holy Merchant Lord repeatedly experienced being submerged by regret and helplessness. His thoughts are completely occupied by the idea of saving the Merchant Immortal ship. Even his past memories are submerged, making them difficult to explore. If that's the case, Li Fan lightly snapped his fingers. When the Merchant Immortal ship was once again engulfed by the light of the explosion, after the Holy Merchant Lord shouted, "Eternity!" The Merchant Immortal ship, which had clearly disappeared, suddenly reappeared from the void. The experimental space imprisoning cat treasure, as well as all the buildings in the immortal ship, and even every immortal ship citizen, were exactly the same as before. Looking at everything before him, the crazed Holy Merchant Lord was inexplicably stunned. "Back, is it back?" 2 lines of tears fell involuntarily. It took him half a day to slowly awaken from his stupor. Still somewhat incredulous, the Holy Merchant Lord repeatedly shuttled through every corner of the Merchant Immortal ship, repeatedly looking at those familiar people, events, and things in his memory. He couldn't find any flaws. Everything was just like reality. Could it be that just now was just a nightmare of mine? It was a reminder from the heavens, telling me that even the eternal Tao cannot be overly relied upon. The Holy Merchant Lord suddenly felt a trance. I remember now. In fact, the Holy Ancestor had warned about this long ago. Before leaving, he specifically instructed that in addition to the eternal Tao, there also needed to be another trump card for self-preservation. The immortal ship splitting back then was actually instigated by the Holy Ancestor in secret. Otherwise, even if there were disagreements about the plan to crash into the high wall, how could the Xuansheng immortal ship, whose entire power was under the control of the Holy Ancestor, have split? If the Merchant Immortal ship is completely destroyed, it can return inside the high wall to find the Zan Immortal ship. Deep within the Zan Immortal ship's treasury, there is a hidden initial backup of the Merchant Immortal ship. Similarly, in our Merchant Immortal ship, there is also a backup of the Zan Immortal ship's state when it split. As the saying goes, Zan is inseparable from Shang, and Shang is inseparable from Zan. Located in 2 different star skies, as long as either the Zan or Shang Immortal ship survives, the Xuansheng Immortal ship will exist forever. Moreover, the inside of the high wall where the Zan Immortal ship is located is much safer than the Shuo Star Sea. With the many treasures they divided back then, they will definitely be able to develop steadily. This is equivalent to the Merchant Immortal ship always having a way out. This secret is only known to the Holy Lords of each generation. However, over the past few years, the immortal ship's reliance and abuse of the eternal Tao has become increasingly serious. And no matter what disaster occurs, eternity can restore the immortal ship to its original state. Over time, even the holy merchant lords of each generation have slowly forgotten the life-saving strategy left by the first holy ancestor. In my trance, I saw the immortal ship being destroyed. My mentality collapsed, and I almost forgot about this. Fortunately, it was just an illusion. The holy merchant lord muttered to himself. Could it be that this is a reminder from the first holy ancestor in the dark? Does he want me to return inside the wall? That's right, remembering the inside of the high wall seemed to trigger some keywords. Another series of long-sealed memories emerged from the holy merchant lord's mind. Before leaving, the first ancestor also mentioned that if the Xuansheng immortal ship is completely destroyed, then return to the ancestral land. The Xuansheng immortal ship is transformed from a cave heaven in the ancestral land. The immortal ship Cave Heaven, as well as all the immortal ship citizens, except for the first Holy Lord, all have backups in the ancestral land world. That is an experimental field created and monitored by true immortals from the upper realm. When the holy ancestor led the crowd to escape, he triggered the defense mechanism in the experimental field. The ancestral land has since fallen into isolation. According to the holy ancestor's speculation, that experimental field is quite special. Unless it is affected by the annihilation tribulation, ordinary disasters will hardly affect it. Strange, how come I remember these past memories today? The holy merchant lord was somewhat confused. After a period of dazed expression, he looked at the vibrant immortal ship space and comforted himself. It seems that the illusion just now was too shocking to me. We have forgotten the principle of being prepared for danger in times of peace for too long. After being awake for only a moment, the holy merchant lord once again fell into the memories of the past. In the reality of the Xuanwang immortal realm, this holy merchant lord had been in a still, motionless state from the beginning. He was immersed in the illusory world that Li Fan had woven for him. Li Fan had carefully investigated the merchant immortal ship from beginning to end. With his current strength, he was still able to create a lifelike illusion to deceive the holy merchant lord. Even if there are any flaws, he will probably convince himself and turn a blind eye. Li Fan commented indifferently. There were indeed many good things in the holy merchant lord's memory. In addition to the holy ancestor's arrangement within the high wall, There were also many materials returned by the holy merchants of past generations after exploring other possibilities. A total of 28 possibilities are involved. These are all safe places where Tao annihilation has not caused a world-destroying disaster. In fact, if the situation is not as good as open black lens bracket primordial close black lens bracket, then the holy merchant lords will not return the specific situation. Li Fan roughly scanned these possible states. Every small change in the long river of history will cause completely different directions in the future. These possibilities are very different from the primordial state in which Li Fan is located. Among them, what Li Fan was most interested in was the one where countless lower realms were absorbed by the immortal realm, and the immortal realm successfully resisted the tide of Tao annihilation. 1598. The immortal boat is about to sink. The turning point occurred after the previous immortal emperor of the immortal realm, Emperor Jiayang, abdicated. The successor was not Emperor Tianluo, but Zan Yi. Unlike Emperor Tianluo, who was fond of grand achievements and wanted to accomplish everything in one fell swoop, completely resolving the annihilation calamity of the immortal realm, Emperor Xuanyi's goal from the beginning was clear. Concentrate all available resources and power to ensure the survival of the 9 central star regions of the immortal realm. The other star regions of the immortal realm, and even the countless cultivation realms in the mortal world, were all expendable targets. Emperor Xuanyi's strategy had a miraculous effect. The 9 major star regions of the immortal realm stood tall like rising highlands above the great tide of annihilation. Although it came at the cost of countless star regions being submerged below, at least a temporary victory was won. Compared to the many star regions of the immortal realm, the fate of the countless cultivation worlds in the lower realms was much better. Their power level was too low, and they didn't even meet the conditions to be sacrifices. Therefore, they were preserved until the very end. They were then absorbed into the immortal realm, and from then on, they no longer had to worry about the annihilation calamity. The mortals of the lower realms even benefited from the disaster, ascending to immortality in one fell swoop. The reason why the new immortal realm needed to absorb the lower realms was simple. Although it had temporarily defeated the annihilation calamity, Emperor Xuanyi did not relax. He knew that the annihilation calamity had not truly disappeared. As the overall annihilation process of the mountains and seas deepened, the annihilation calamity was likely to sweep back at some point in the future. The countless worlds absorbed from the lower realms were for precautionary purposes. Compared to the vast star regions of the immortal realm, these worlds were as fragile as dust. This also meant that they were more sensitive to disasters when facing them. Therefore, they could act as warning devices for the arrival of the annihilation calamity. When the great calamity is about to arrive, the attached realms will be destroyed first. Based on the number and speed of the destroyed attached realms, the immortal realm could make a preliminary judgment on the power of the annihilation calamity that would descend next. This Emperor Xuanyi is more reliable than Emperor Taishan. I can even learn from his early warning method. Li Fan nodded to himself. It's just that I don't know. Clearly there are countless possibilities within the mountains and seas, and there must be quite a few that have successfully resisted annihilation like Emperor Xuanyi. Why not directly learn from other possibilities? I think, even if the immortal emperors of the immortal realm cannot cross the mountains and seas, they should have the ability to observe other possibilities. Could it be that because the situations between the various possibilities are different, there is no universal method of salvation? Among the 28 possibilities, 26 of them are quite similar to the original where Li Fan is located. As for the other 2, one is that all living beings have abandoned their physical bodies and exist in the form of pure spiritual bodies. Without the shackles of the flesh, they can attach themselves to the great Tao of the mountains and seas at any time, making it easier to survive the annihilation calamity. And the other possibility is extremely strange. It seems that very early on, the course of history deviated. The immortal realm does not exist. There is only a vast, desolate, endless starry sky. This starry sky itself is connected to the mountains and seas. Its vitality is also extremely strong, and it can resist the annihilation calamity to a certain extent on its own. Even in some dead starry skies that have been swallowed by annihilation, life can occasionally slowly recover. Because of this, although the strength of the residents in this desolate starry sky is extremely weak compared to the immortals, they can live longer without much effort in the face of the annihilation calamity. However, it seems that this desolate starry sky is extremely repulsive to cultivators. The martyred pioneers of the Saint Merchant battleship who infiltrated it were barely able to survive there only after completely abandoning their cultivation. According to his guess, the stronger the cultivator, the stronger the backlash from heaven and earth they will suffer there. If a true immortal goes. Li Fan estimated that, with the ability of the desolate starry sky to resist annihilation to a certain extent, if there is no transcendent power, I am afraid that once they enter, they will either die or be crippled. In fact, this desolate starry sky itself can be regarded as a powerful being connected to the mountains and seas. It's just that I don't know what kind of things happened in the past that led to the immortal realm not being born. Logically speaking, the three sages of Lian Shan, Gui Hai, and Tai Yi should all exist in all realms. A trace of doubt flashed in Li Fan's heart. However, it is also possible that the information passed down by the martyred saint merchant pioneers is wrong. After all, with his strength, he may not be able to see the truth of the entire possibility. Li Fan shook his head slightly. In these 28 possibilities, the martyred saint merchant pioneers are like tall and bright lighthouses. If they have the ability to cross the mountains and seas, they only need to follow the direction in the dark and continue to move forward, and they can basically reach their destination smoothly. And Li Fan also found in the memory of the Lord of the Saint Merchant Immortals the method for the pioneers to go to other possibilities alone. An eyeball is crystal clear as a diamond. The light projected from the eyeball seems to span the mountains and seas. One charge can send a consciousness to another possibility. But this treasure, which can be called the treasure of the saint merchants, has pitifully weak protection. It is very fragile, and cannot even withstand the impact of the power of a nascent soul cultivator. Therefore, in all likelihood, it should have completely disappeared with the destruction of the saint merchants. I didn't expect that there would be such a treasure among the saint merchants. Li Fan couldn't help but feel a little regretful. But it was only regret. When the profound yellow immortal realm is completed in the future and can be used as a world-crossing immortal ship, Li Fan can explore the mountains and seas on his own. Knowing the situation of the transit point in advance is just to make things easier. Furthermore, transcendent realm experts should have the means to observe the possibilities in the mountains and seas, right? Otherwise, how can they accurately find their destination in the vast mountains and seas? Li Fan couldn't help but think. Even if I have arrived at the transcendent realm by opportunistic means, the road ahead is invisible. I can also proceed according to these 28 coordinates of the saint merchants. I won't be completely in the dark. The path that Li Fan is currently taking is probably unique in the entire mountains and seas. Other transcendent experts, and even the holy ones, cannot be used as a reference for Li Fan. Everything needs him to take one step and see one step. After dealing with the information in the brain of the Lord of the Saint Merchants that was outside the original possibility, Li Fan focused his attention on the various things within the original ancestral land. If I'm not mistaken, the so-called ancestral land should also be within the high wall, in the Rotten K Dao field. However, I have the inheritance of guarding the mound, and I know everything about the worlds in this experimental space, and there is no existence that matches the description of the ancestral land in his memory. Li Fan's mind entered the control center of the Rotten K Dao field again, searching and checking again, ensuring that nothing was missed. When the profound merchant immortal ship escaped, it activated the defensive measures. The ancestral land fell into a closed state, perhaps that's the reason. Li Fan carefully checked it again. His gaze swept back and forth across the familiar light curtain composed of countless divided square spaces. This time, the focus of Li Fan's attention was not those areas with shimmering light, but those dark, pitch-black star skies that Li Fan originally thought had turned into dead lands. These black star skies are all areas that have been swallowed by the annihilation calamity. With my familiarity with annihilation, I shouldn't be wrong. Otherwise, I wouldn't have failed to discover the so-called immortal ship ancestral land for so long. This time, Li Fan observed them one by one. Once, twice. Logically speaking, even if the immortal ship ancestral land is hidden deeply, it shouldn't be able to escape such a meticulous investigation by Li Fan. But Li Fan had a faint premonition in his heart. The immortal ship ancestral land may not be ordinary. Please, you, collect 6 books, bar. Therefore, he searched back and forth with great patience, not letting go of any detail. His divine sense enveloped all the black space for 100 days. Suddenly, in one place, an extremely imperceptible fluctuation occurred for no reason. It was fleeting. If Li Fan hadn't been staring at it, he would have largely ignored it. This is hiding the aura of being swallowed by the annihilation calamity. Using Mo Sha as a trump card, I never thought that I would be deceived by Mo Sha one day. Li Fan was surprised and delighted, and immediately separated a strand of divine sense and poured it into this black starry sky. But what he didn't expect was that once his divine sense entered it, it disappeared instantly. As if swallowed. Immediately afterwards, wisps of black gas emerged from nowhere beside Li Fan's main body. It's not a disguise, but the real annihilation calamity. My divine sense rashly entered, and annihilation followed the connection between the divine sense and the main body and came to me. Li Fan's hair stood on end in an instant, and he instinctively used the illusion as truth divine power. The annihilation black gas that came to search for the enemy instantly lost its target. But they were not confused by this, and turned to attack the outer heavens of the profound yellow immortal realm. It was as if the immortal ship, which had not yet been fully built, had been gnawed out of several holes by termites. The Dao annihilation was slowly pouring in through these holes. The holes are still small now, and they can still be salvaged. If the holes are bigger, my profound yellow immortal ship will sink before it even goes into the water. Li Fan's heart tightened, and he quickly instructed Mo Sha and Dao Yi Chong to sew up these holes. As for himself, he quickly flashed to the Shuo Star Sea. According to the clues indicated by the Supreme Tao Book, he captured and suppressed several true immortals in a row. And the three nameless venerables, wealth, rock solid, and silence, were used as pillars to fill the sky. After a lot of hard work, he barely calmed the annihilation. Half a day later, Li Fan patrolled the profound yellow immortal realm and made sure that there were no signs of annihilation affecting it for the time being. Only then did he wipe the cold sweat from his forehead and breathe a sigh of relief. He looked at the few extra pillars in the heaven and earth, and sighed. Originally, these few were intended to be left for the profound yellow harmonious Tao immortals to practice with. Now, we can only act expediently. Since recovering his memory in this life, he has never suffered such a big loss. Li Fan's expression became a little gloomy, and he looked again at the black-covered starry sky in the rotten Dao field. It was pitch black, submerged by annihilation. The strange fluctuation I sensed before will definitely not be wrong. So, there is only that one moment of opportunity. Li Fan narrowed his eyes, concentrating, waiting for the fluctuation to descend again. This time, he waited for more than 150 days. With prior preparation, Li Fan completely saw the changes in it this time. It was as if a black curtain was lifted, revealing the normal white vitality light inside. It only lasted for a short moment before the black curtain was about to fall again. Li Fan seized the opportunity, and his divine sense drew into it. 1599. Survival in the Ancestral World. The world was a dim, silent expanse, as if everything was petrified. This was the scene that greeted Li Fan upon entering the immortal boat ancestral realm. However, this silence didn't last long. Like a spring breeze, everything in the world began to awaken from its petrified state. Light reappeared, and all things revived. The world once again became noisy, full of vitality. However, the beings of the immortal boat ancestral realm seemed to have a clear understanding of their petrified state. After surviving this ordeal, they all knelt on the ground, singing the praises of the divine grace. This world was not large, not even comparable to the Xuanwang realm before its ascent. In an instant, Li Fan's divine sense swept across it. Thus, he understood the details of this so-called divine being. Approximately every 100 years, a great calamity would be conceived in the world, destined to destroy all living beings and even the world itself. When the people were in despair, a divine being, with great compassion, found the only way to save the world. Before the great calamity arrived, the divine being would petrify all living beings and even the world itself to resist the disaster. After the calamity passed, they would return to normal. It is unknown how the beings of the immortal boat ancestral realm initially viewed this somewhat crazy plan. But after experiencing countless petrification escapades, the beings of this world had become accustomed to the drastic changes every 100 years. The flow of time in this realm is different from the outside. 1 year here is only equivalent to about 1 day in the Xuanwang immortal realm. However, the situation here is the opposite of what I observed outside. When it appears as the black of Tao annihilation, this place is full of life. When it reveals the white light of vitality, this realm is in a state of silent petrification. Li Fan raised his head and looked towards the sky. There, a massive consciousness was hovering, the culprit behind all these anomalies. Massive, only in relation to the other beings of the immortal boat ancestral realm. Compared to this wisp of Li Fan's divided consciousness, it was a small fry meeting a big one. There was no need for caution. Li Fan went straight in to investigate. As all things revived, the divine being fell into a deep sleep. Even with some protective measures, it was difficult to stop Li Fan. Thus, Li Fan was able to see all of its memories. Countless images surged into his mind. The cause of everything originated from the rebellion of the Xuancheng Immortal boat. Originally experimental data under observation, it escaped from the experimental field. This triggered emergency response measures, and this experimental field was isolated and sealed off. The original monitor of this world was punished and annihilated as a result. If the rotten K-Dao field was still operating normally, a new monitor would have been sent to take over. But with the Dao annihilation approaching, the Dao field had been abandoned by all parties. The Immortal Boat ancestral realm had since fallen into a state of isolation and seclusion. But in fact, the time without the interference of the Dao field forces was the period of the most rapid overall development of the Immortal Boat ancestral realm. All forces united to study the reasons for the Xuancheng Immortal Boat's rebellion and the drastic changes in the world. They eventually discovered the shocking secret that the world they were in was actually an experimental field set up by the Immortal Realm. Who would willingly be a lab rat? Naturally, they wanted to break free from this fate, just like the Xuancheng Immortal Boat. They began to research and analyze the immortal restrictions and formations hidden within the world. All factions put aside their differences, worked together, and used the immortal arts for their own purposes. The overall strength of the cultivators in the Immortal Boat ancestral realm thus soared rapidly. However, they were still far from breaking the rotten K-Dao field sealing methods. At this moment, Dao annihilation descended. Strictly speaking, the Immortal Boat ancestral realm was not facing the true Dao annihilation tide that destroyed the immortal realm. After all, being in the rotten K-Dao field, there was a guardian mound illusory image supporting it. What they encountered was merely a few droplets splashed after the Dao annihilation collided with the guardian mound illusory image. Even so, Dao annihilation was not something the Immortal Boat ancestral realm could withstand. The once endless and vast world, the countless grotto heavens like stars in the sky, were mostly swallowed up in an instant. A small remaining portion struggled to survive in fear. Fortunately, they had previously conducted collective research on the immortal arrays and restrictions of the rotten K-Dao field. Relying on the remaining activation of the immortal arrays, these people had the capital to fight against Dao annihilation. Just like the immortal realm once resisted Dao annihilation. In the years that followed, the surviving beings of the Immortal Boat ancestral realm tried every means and exhausted everything to find a way to survive under the shadow of Dao annihilation. Perhaps in a desperate situation of life and death, human potential can truly be infinitely stimulated. The cultivators of the Immortal Boat ancestral realm actually found a possible solution. This book is recently updated at #6@9@book@bar. Update. Li Fan observed the sleeping consciousness before him. This consciousness did not belong to a single living being, but was formed by the fusion of thousands upon thousands of different thoughts. Each thought represented a talented cultivator in the Immortal Boat ancestral realm. These cultivators each comprehend and cultivate different great Daos. Each cultivates one Dao, intertwined with each other, like a Dao network. A Dao network can bear the weight of Dao annihilation. Although mere mortal cultivators, the depth of Dao principles they can comprehend is completely incomparable to true immortals. But what they have to face is not the true Dao annihilation tide. Therefore, theoretically speaking, if more and more cultivators sacrifice themselves to join this group of consciousness, there is indeed a possibility of success. It's just a pity. Li Fan's gaze passed through this fused consciousness, reaching the inner core. There seemed to be a tiny void. Strands of black were flowing out of this void, gathering like streams. Dao annihilation is not an unchangeable dead thing. On the contrary, Dao annihilation is also very cunning, as if it has its own consciousness. Initially, they were indeed just splashing droplets, but the real Dao annihilation is all-pervasive. It slowly seeps through from these weak droplets. The people of this world cannot realize this. Or rather, when they discover this scene, it is already too late. With support, the once weak droplets slowly have a tendency to develop into a real tide. This level of disaster is no longer something that mortal cultivators can resist. No matter how talented they are. However, in this desperate situation, they can still find a way to survive. Amazing, Li Fan praised, although it is just a last resort survival method. The Immortal Boat ancestral realm's final struggle naturally could not escape Li Fan's eyes. What they adopted was the method of channeling rather than blocking. They attracted and gathered all the leaking Tao annihilation in one place. They used the collective consciousness of everyone to build dikes and high walls to resist. When the limit of consciousness was reached, they would actively detonate the dikes, diverting the disaster eastward, leading Tao annihilation to other spaces in the rotten K-Tao field. 1600. Surviving in desperate situations. The radiance that Li Fan saw flashing by in the outside world was caused by the explosion of everyone's dam of intent. I thought, the fallen immortal Tao arena is, after all, supported by the illusory figure of the Gravekeeper. There's no reason it would fall so quickly. So it turns out these people are the culprits. As the actual master of the fallen immortal Tao arena now, Li Fan was not angered by this. What he truly cared about was the abnormal situation of the immortal arch-ancestral world. Even with everyone's protection, the collision between the dam of intent and the Tao annihilation would cause almost world-destroying disasters to the immortal arch-ancestral world. Therefore, the fused intent also had to separate a portion of its power to petrify the world, in order to protect it completely. Each time it saved the world, it was a huge drain on the fused intent. Within 100 years, when the next Tao annihilation accumulated to its limit, there must be enough successors willing to sacrifice themselves and integrate their own intent. This was to ensure the strength of the fused intent. Otherwise, the immortal arch-ancestral world would face the fate of destruction. Previously, Li Fan learned from Cheng Dao that the total potential of a single possibility might be fixed and unchanging. Every time a prodigy was born, a portion of the potential pool would be reduced. The number of strong individuals that could be born in a single possibility was limited. This principle can be compared to a certain world. Even a strange place like the Xuanwang world, not every era is filled with strong individuals and prodigies. From the perspective of later generations looking at history, after experiencing a period of flourishing cultivation, it would inevitably fall into a trough. Until, after many years, the birth of an unparalleled genius would herald the arrival of a new era. According to common sense, the foundation of the immortal arch-ancestral world would not be able to support the continuous birth of so many prodigies for such a long time. The time flow of the immortal arch-ancestral world is almost 100 times different from the outside world. Since the arrival of the Great Calamity, tens of thousands of years have passed within the fallen immortal Tao arena. Here, it is millions of years. For millions of years, the sons of heaven have always been like sparks that never die out, like moths flying into the flame, to save the mortal world. Magnificent, amazing, bizarre. Although the Tao network of fused intent before me cannot be compared to my myriad manifestations Tao network in any way, it still has its merits. Li Fan's intent left the fused dark clouds before him and searched the heavens and the earth again, hoping to understand the reason why the immortal arch-ancestral world could prosper for so long. But with his vision, he checked it several times and could not find any clues. Even in this fused intent, there were no gains. The one who tied the bell must untie it. It seems that if I want to find the answer to the question, I have to personally take a trip to this immortal arch-ancestral world. After pondering for a moment, Li Fan came up with a plan. Demonic rebirth. If he wanted to completely understand the mysteries of this world, simply differentiating his consciousness and sneaking in would probably not work. Only by using the demonic rebirth secret technique, like the heavenly physician of the past, to deceive the heavenly Tao of this world and transform into a true native, would he have a chance to solve the mystery. In the immortal arch-ancestral world, the kneeling and praying ceremony of hundreds of millions of living beings to the gods came to an end. A new life was also born. Immortal arch-ancestral world, under the rule of the yin-yang demon subduing sect, Linshan City. His surname was Li, and his name was Fan. All infants born on the day of divine revelation would be adopted by the city lord and personally trained. Because there was a rumor that creatures born on this day would receive divine favor and have a boundless future. And past experience and inheritance had largely confirmed this. So Li Fan, from a young age, along with these children of divine favor, received the meticulous training of the Linshan City Lord. And they did indeed live up to the City Lord's expectations. Including Li Fan, there were a total of 72 people. More than half of them had officially entered the Qi refining realm before the age of 1. Whether or not one could achieve Qi refining perfection by the age of 1 was a crucial dividing line. Only those who met this requirement had the value to continue being cultivated as a child of divine favor. Those who failed would lose their preferential treatment from then on. However, with the City Lord's support, they could live without worry. A total of 39 infants were taken into the mountain gate by the yin-yang demon subduing sect Immortals for formal cultivation. The Yin-Yang demon-subduing sect was one of the 5 great immortal sects in the world. Its mission was to subdue demons and eliminate evil. What is a demon? What is evil? Those who do not submit are demons. Those who are disrespectful are evil. The disciples of the Yin-Yang demon-subduing sect must kill a specific number of demons and heretics every year during their cultivation career in order to be qualified to continue their identity as disciples of the demon-subduing sect. When the disciples of the demon-subduing sect walked the world, all the evil spirits were terrified. Among the disciples of divine favor, Li Fan's talent was also top-notch. At the age of 1.5, he officially established his foundation and received a personal initiation from the sect master of the demon-subduing sect. A scroll recording the cultivation experiences and insights of countless predecessors of the demon-subduing sect, the demon-subduing heavenly book, was forcibly instilled into his mind. A total of 13 disciples of divine favor received the initiation. Only 6 people survived the impact of the heavenly book and were still able to maintain their sanity. With the blessing of the heavenly book, Li Fan's cultivation speed soared even faster. At the age of 3, he officially formed his corps and went down the mountain to subdue demons. A 3-year-old child wants to subdue evil spirits. It sounds like a joke. But in the Yin-Yang demon-subduing sect, it was just a common occurrence. After Li Fan obtained the mountain and river lament sword personally passed down by the sect master, he was flicked by the sect master's sleeve to a place hundreds of thousands of miles away. Only after killing 10,000 demons and heretics would he be allowed to return to the mountain. The journey back of hundreds of thousands of miles needed to be paved with the blood of evil spirits. Li Fan held a sharp sword, walked the world, and patrolled the world. Those with the appearance of demons and heretics were struck with the force of thunder. Half a year later, when he successfully returned to the mountain gate, the mountain and river lament sword had already been stained red with blood. The sect master reached out and took the mountain and river lament. The red sword body slowly condensed into the 2 characters of Li Fan, engraved on the sword body. It emitted a strange light. Only then did Li Fan see that, in addition to his own name on the sword body, there were other densely packed, hundreds of people. The names were all written in blood, but the degree of redness was different. Ranked in the top 3. A hint of joy flashed in the eyes of the demon-subduing sect master, and he officially accepted Li Fan as his personal disciple. After becoming a disciple of the sect master, Li Fan received further preferential treatment. The main thing was that he could exchange and learn from disciples of other immortal sects. "Do you know what sparring is?" the sect master asked, stroking his beard. Li Fan said solemnly, "It is to determine who is superior and also to decide life and death. This is sparring." The sect master showed a look of satisfaction. In 5 years, Li Fan sparred with disciples of other immortal sects nearly 1,000 times, without a single defeat. He slowly became an undefeated legend in the mouths of the disciples of the 5 great immortal sects. After another hearty victory, he finally broke through and entered the nascent soul realm. After the nascent soul realm, one could no longer bully the younger disciples of the immortal arc. Instead, there was a new goal. Under the guidance of a mysterious man in black, the newly promoted nascent soul disciples of the 5 great immortal sects gathered in a blessed land. In the blessed land, there were ancient formations and relics everywhere. They exuded a palpitating aura. According to the mysterious man, these relics were all the work of immortals. They would be locked here for 10 years. 10 years later, the restrictions in the relics would explode on time. If they could not understand the mysteries of the immortal restrictions, they would only die miserably. This was the test they needed to undergo after being promoted to the nascent soul realm. Faced with a desperate situation of life and death, the immortal sect disciples all looked as usual. No one was clamoring to return to the sect. In their view, life and death were just ordinary things. Being able to stay safely for 10 years was already extremely fortunate. In the closed blessed land, there was no guidance from a master. Everything depended on individual understanding. Some formed gangs and worked together to understand. Some were eccentric and devoted themselves to research alone. Conflicts broke out from time to time, and many people died in the fighting. However, most of the time, everyone was focused on studying the relics of the immortal world. Just when they thought they would really stay in this closed blessed land for 10 years. One day in the 6th year, the blessed land suddenly rumbled and shook. Just as everyone was wondering what was going on, a long-lost ray of light from the outside world shone down from the sky. It shone on Li Fan. The gazes of all the talented disciples of the 5 great immortal sects turned to Li Fan. Their faces were full of disbelief. The mysterious man in black who had led them into the blessed land appeared again. Staring at Li Fan, he murmured, 52nd in all sessions. This result is still acceptable. I hope to add another one. When the talented disciples heard what the man in black said, their expressions became even more shocked. They originally thought that Li Fan had already defied the heavens enough by uncovering the secrets of the immortal family ahead of time. But they didn't expect to only rank 52nd in all sessions. What kind of monsters were the previous 51? Just as everyone's hearts were shaking, they heard the man in black say again. As for you, go reincarnate and experience again. I hope that next time, you can be born with a good womb. And higher comprehension. The man in black only took Li Fan away. Everyone else was buried in the collapse of the blessed land. Li Fan silently watched as the blessed land, which had devoured more than 100 talented disciples from various sects, turned into a black pill in the hands of the man in black. Eat it, the man in black said lightly, throwing the pill over. Li Fan didn't hesitate and swallowed it in one gulp. In an instant, a flash of inspiration appeared in his mind, and countless thoughts burst forth. They all came from the thoughts of those talented individuals in the blessed land. Their progress in understanding the immortal relics was not as good as Li Fan's. But there were also things worth learning from. 5 years of seclusion, plus the blessed land and the talents turned into pills. Li Fan stepped into the transformation god realm in one fell swoop. Before he could rest, Li Fan was taken by the man in black and flew towards the sky. The astral winds were fierce, as if they had the ability to erode. The protective spiritual power was useless, and Li Fan's cheeks were stinging. Before long, traces of blood flowed from all parts of his body. Li Fan just narrowed his eyes slightly and silently brushed away the blood. He closely followed behind the man in black, continuing to fly towards the high sky. It seemed endless, and the higher he went, the greater the resistance he encountered. It wasn't until after crossing a certain threshold that Li Fan's vision suddenly broadened. A magnificent, purple Tao palace, resembling a celestial abode, stood tall above the clouds. The people within the Tao palace were all in a hurry, indifferent to everything else. Li Fan followed along, arriving at the central hall of the Tao palace. Standing in the center of the hall was not a statue of anyone, but rather a peculiar device. Amidst countless encircling rings, the light and shadow revealed was precisely that of the myriad living beings below. This is the heaven-peering divine ring. Within it, you can see all the secrets of the world. But do not be greedy. Remember, even if you see 10,000 great Taos before you, you can only choose one. Go. The man in black rarely offered a few words of advice, then pointed to the heaven-peering divine ring ahead. He didn't explain the consequences of failure. Li Fan had no other choice, approaching the divine ring step by step. The closer Li Fan got to the divine ring, the faster the light and shadow within it seemed to pulsate. The blood in his body surged, as if it would burst forth at any moment. Li Fan endured the discomfort, slowly stepping into the light and shadow. The instant his body was swallowed by the light and shadow of the divine ring, Li Fan felt as if he had completely disappeared. He seemed to transform into a ring, and all people, events, and things in the world unfolded before his eyes. Their names, their life experiences, their talents, their divine abilities, all were clear at a glance. The events, from the Zhanshang cave heaven breaking through the boundary to the beginning of the world's closure. All that had happened in the past, no matter how trivial, appeared before his eyes, scene by scene. The objects, their appearances were dissected inch by inch, revealing their underlying foundations, the great Tao laws they represented. Worthy of the name heaven-peering divine ring. With its help, Li Fan, at the transformation god realm, could fully glimpse the principles of a world. But after all, he was merely a mortal. Gradually, his body began to be unable to bear it. The light and shadow formed by the world gradually became illusory, and the image of the ring began to appear. Li Fan knew that he had to make a choice. But he did not look back at everything in the world. Instead, his gaze was fixed on the revealed heaven-peering divine ring. If I can obtain this thing, wouldn't it be equivalent to obtaining the world? Why seek far and wide when what you need is close at hand? With this realization in his heart, he resolutely abandoned everything he had seen with the aid of the divine ring. He simply focused intently on the heaven-peering divine ring, trying to comprehend the principles within it. If it were a completely unfamiliar, extraordinary object beyond his comprehension, Li Fan would certainly be unable to analyze it in such a short time. But Li Fan discovered that he was not unfamiliar with the essence of the divine ring. Although he had never formally come into contact with it before, from the beginning of qi refining, principles very close to it had often appeared in his cultivation journey. It was as if the entire world was actually transformed from this heaven-peering divine ring. His cultivation path was to use himself as a hand to touch and perceive a part of the divine ring. As the thought arose, the divine ring before him also transformed from illusion to reality. The pressure it brought no longer existed, because Li Fan had truly become one of the countless parallel rings within the heaven-peering divine ring. Before his eyes flashed, and Li Fan arrived in a dark space. Countless figures, in a circular staircase, sat cross-legged here. They merely nodded in acknowledgement to Li Fan, the newcomer. Then, they continued to focus their gaze on the center. There, although nothing concrete could be seen, Li Fan keenly felt that it seemed to be even darker than other places. Even, the darkness of the entire space originated from it. This is Tao annihilation. A word flashed through Li Fan's mind for no reason. Then, like a chain reaction, it triggered Li Fan's original memories. Without anyone present noticing, there was a subtle change in Li Fan's eyes. Finally awake, the selection process for cultivators in this world is quite interesting. Even somewhat cruel. All other living beings are expendable at any time, only to most quickly cultivate true geniuses who can enter this place.